Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thanks, David.
Yep.
All right, well, it's 6 o'clock, so let's get rolling. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first up is kind of a slate of interviews for applicants for various appointments. And kind of like last time, we'll take interviews in the beginning, and then just kind of make it hopefully convenient for everybody else. We kind of reserve our decision until the end of the meeting, so we can kind of keep rolling on with business. And there is an executive session reserved there in the event that any select board members or majority of select board members would feel most comfortable going into executive session to discuss any particular appointments. Though it look like there's going to be any heated contests here. So with that, I'd like to roll into our discussion with Catherine about the town health officer. How are you? You can stay where you're at. It's only a difference of a row. We don't have a hot seat here. So the way we've been kind of organizing these is just allowing candidates to just give a brief intro. We obviously received a copy of your email and letter of interest and resume as well. So thank you for sending those. So if you just wouldn't mind, just for the record, just kind of giving a quick intro who you are and your background and why you're interested in the position, and then we'll just open it up to the select board for a handful of questions.
Catherine Saunders, lived on Scott Road, formerly lived for 33 years, right next to the old West Church. And then we sold it in 2019 and built a house on Scott Road. I've been in healthcare for 30-some years, going all the way from being an LNA to now I'm a nurse practitioner. So I've couple of master's degrees as chief infectious nurse practitioner, so definitely into healthcare. I should say, right now I'm working at school nurse right at Calais Elementary School, and I'll also be right. I'll be at Jody as well next year. And that's the probably more public health. School nurses are considered public health. Nurses really, when they are in public health, whereas before I did primary care, and also was a nursing learner. So, I have a wide range of experience working in nursing homes, nowhere else, schools, hospitals, as a nurse for, I've always been interested in giving back to the community, and I actually spoke to Jay a few years ago. And offered my services if you ever needed any help.
Great.
So, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
All my kids have graduated and gone, and I have grandkids. So,
Well, thank you for your interest and willingness to step forward for the position. It's obviously timely with Jay's resignation and move out of the area. And we're all excited about about having a health officer without any interlap. One of the questions I had was relative to the role. So it's one of the few roles within the town that has the authority to write citations. Is that right? Under certain circumstances where there's.
I don't know if that's technically true. There is like an inspection aspect to it. But I think that's evolving. It used to be the rentals, if there was a concern about sanitation of rentals that the health officer was designated. I think that's now moved to the fire chief.
Okay.
But there is a bit of a regulatory aspect to the role.
Okay, and are you familiar with those? Did that come up in any discussion with Jay?
no, so it was mostly dealing with blood rates. He did tell me about the looking at rentals, and he did say that it was changing and moving, and since he doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So
it's certainly not as common in Calais. So, and then it does seem like in the last couple of conversations we've had with other bodies that it's moving in that direction, but I just wanted to kind of touch base on that. The other item, I'm not sure if you've been following this conversation at all more recently, but we've had some community members express an interest in kind of organizing some thoughts around or exploring the possibility of I guess defining what a community nurse could be, and whether or not you have any familiarity with that type of role within a community, and whether you'd be willing in this role as health officer, potentially organizing a work group to kind of start defining what that could be. I mean, it's really just kind of an exploratory conversation at this point.
Sure, I would, part of that. Jared Weiss, when I started in January at Calais, he mentioned that there is interest in having a community-based school. I don't know if that's the same thing that you're talking about. Community-based school, school-based health clinic.
Oh, interesting.
And so, I was very interested in that. I did do that. I worked for 5 years out in Maine as a pediatric practitioner, and so I was that.
Yeah.
So, it's using school-based healthcare, which is, I think, the
Yeah.
research has shown that it reduces absenteeism, it reduces parents losing more, et cetera, et cetera. Going back another time. But, anyway, very interested in that. So, yeah, it kind of dovetails with that.
I think so, yeah, and I think that's kind of in line with what the kind of initial conversations that we've been having, you know, from a select board standpoint. You know, I think we've got pretty limited expertise and capacity to run point on that kind of conversation, and it seems like the idea of having a health officer who could serve as kind of that point person and have the somewhat autonomy to organize community members to have those conversations without spinning up a dedicated committee would I think really be beneficial.
I agree. I was really interested when I was reading the, Barbara was kind enough to send me the link to the town health officer manual.
Yeah,
And I was looking at that, and I was really surprised, to see that they really defined public health risk versus private health risk. And I was surprised that the health officer it wouldn't morph over into private health risk. I thought of, and maybe you saw this, I think it was this past winter when, someone on the Beacon Branch Road who didn't have heat and food, he actually was imploring people to help him out. And I thought, what must you taking care of as a community? You can't ignore that.
yeah. Well, that's encouraging. Thank you, and thanks, Barbara, for forwarding that along. Are there any other select board members that have questions that they'd like to?
All I would say is, I think we're delighted. I'm delighted that you're interested in doing this, and I think thinking through what the purview of the role is important, and making sure that you're doing the work that you need to do, and also you have time for leadership on these other topics, right? I think, and helping us understand what the role can be, is something that we welcome. So I think it's your background is just so rich, with experience, so I will just be, happy to have your expertise. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying.
Yeah. Bill, do you have any other comments or questions?
No, I've known Catherine for a long time. I'm glad you're stepping up Thank you.
Well, very good. Thank you, Catherine, for taking the time to come in and thanks for offering yourself up for the position. And Barbara will be in touch with a final decision, and it looks like we also have some state paperwork that we'll need to sign as well. That's also been prepared. So I think we're in pretty good shape to make a decision and make an appointment. Thank you. So next up, we have a TRB alternate position and an applicant, Emma Marks. Hiya. Welcome to the community.
Thank you. It's been 2 weeks.
Yeah. So you've closed and you've moved into the house. Yeah,
We moved on the house road, on the 10th.
great. So can you, I guess speak to a little bit in summary of why you're interested in this particular position and kind of your background?
Definitely. So this is my partner Kelly. We lived down in Tunbridge for about 4 years before this in a rental. And we love Tunbridge, wanted to be involved, but I kind of saw moving and buying a house as like a real opportunity to start making those longer term connections. And we were excited to move to Calais. It was on the list of towns we wanted to move to, but didn't necessarily think we'd be able to. So when it all worked out, we were really happy to land here. And as I was like getting ready to move, I was like, you know, I want to meet more folks in the community and start to get involved. And I really admire that spirit in Vermont and hope to be part of that. So I saw Barbara's post on Front Porch Forum and was reading through the different positions that you all were and thinking about like what made sense with my interests and my abilities. And the development review board sounded really interesting to me. I'm like a pretty detail oriented person and I like policy. Like it's not what I do in my job, but it's just something I find really interesting. And as someone who had recently gone through the home buying process and had been a renter for many years and felt that uncertainty, I was interested in that aspect around affordable housing and community housing, but at the same time, I also have a background in agriculture and a real like love for Vermont as it is. So I like feel those tensions and I'm excited to be on a board, hopefully, that helps to work through some of those issues here in town.
You had mentioned in your letter of interest or email that your undergrad work was in political science, right? And I was curious, do you have formal education in agriculture or just like a master's program of some sort?
So my undergrad, I did a double major, so
Okay.
political science for one, agricultural communications for
I see.
another. And then I farmed, I worked on veggie farms for 2 years and I kind of worked my like career post-grad life has mostly been in the ag space.
Great, thank you.
For sure.
Do any of the other select board members have questions or comments?
Welcome.
Thank you.
I guess my only, first of all, I think the spirit of the application is terrific and really appreciate it. It's not everybody makes time for such things, so really appreciate that. And you know, this is alternate position, so that was, you fully understand what that means?
Yes, I thought that was great. I was
Okay.
like, I don't wanna move here and immediately be like, let me vote on everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Much rather spend some time getting to learn board and the zoning regulations.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So, I think that's all I have. Thanks, anyone interested in reading our zoning regulations?
Well, I think, you know, from my personal perspective, I feel like a DRB appointment would be an odd one to put somebody so new to the community because all communities are gonna have their histories and intricacies and their zoning regulations that require a fair amount of familiarity and impartiality because you're operating in this semi-judicial capacity when you're participating in the board and making decisions. And when I was reading through your interest, I was, it's like, oh man, it would be, knowing that we're going through such an intense town plan update right now. I thought your participation in the planning commission would be pretty interesting. Just because that's more like getting into the meat of making the policies, and given your background, I think that would be an area where you could add a lot of value to that dialogue. Which is, I guess, my plug for maybe, as a member of the community, think about, just participating in those conversations, because they're pretty actively working through, town plan policy writing. Anyway, and so as I was kind of thinking about that, there are two alternate positions, and one of them has an expiration date of 2026, which overlaps with some openings on the planning commission as well. So I think
Yes.
it could make sense.
Do you see how the public?
Yeah.
Yes, I feel myself getting reeled in.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was just some of my thought process, and just kind of open ideating and town planning. Anyway, good. That would just be the rationale between that kind of decision making, but anyway. Are there any other questions or comments? No. Great, well, thank you for showing an interest, we appreciate it, and yep, Barbara.
Willa is on in case you
Oh,
check in with her.
Willa, did you have any other comments? We received your endorsement, and it looks like the two of you had an opportunity to connect over the phone.
No, I just wanted to be here to support Emma and say we had a really good conversation and would be great to have her join as an alternate if you so choose. So
Great, thank you, Willa.
you're welcome.
Thanks, Barbara. Great, yeah, so Barbara will be in touch likely tomorrow. You're welcome to stick around for the marathon that we've got here, but yeah, I mean, that's fair. It won't count against you. That's for sure.
They already moved in, so.
Yeah, right. And we know where you live.
Yeah.
Great, so the next interview that we have up is is Claudia Welch, and she was thinking that she wasn't gonna be able to get here until later, right? So we're just gonna,
45. and we-
That's right, yeah,
I told
yeah.
her we'd just table it till she gets here.
sorry about that, yeah,
That's
so
okay.
we're gonna table that one, and then when Claudia shows up, we'll revisit it.
Great.
So the next items would be accepting some resignations. I had alluded to Jay Copping's resignation from the health officer position. Rachel Harahar's resignation from Lister, and which is a recent appointment, as well as Emily Trudeau's resignation from the Ordinance Advisory Committee. I don't know that these require too much dialogue. Did everybody see the resignation letters that were very thoughtfully put together? They were pretty unexpected personal circumstances for most, with the exception of Jay. I think it'd be appropriate to accept the resignation of all three as a single motion. Was everybody comfortable with doing that?
Yes.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the resignations of the town health officer, Jake Copping, town lister, Rachel Har, as well as Emily Trudeau's appointment to the Ordinance Advisory Committee. Thanks. Second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Yes, Barbara.
So, in the past, Calais has appointed a town health officer annually. But what I've learned from the Department of Health is that it's a 3-year term, and they consider it a 3-year appointment. And so you have if you make the decision tonight and do choose to appoint, Catherine as the town health officer, the appointment form that you're signing for the Vermont Department of Health is a 3-year term.
Okay,
So I just want to make that clear to the select board. You can still appoint her for only 1 year if you want to, but the form that we're signing for the Vermont Department of Health is a 3-year term, so we might as well make it a 3-year term, feels to me.
thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Catherine, is that an appointment timeframe that you'd be comfortable with? Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very good. Well, then with that, we'll move on to the check-in with the school board members we have in attendance. Welcome. If you want, I guess all the recording devices are up here, so if you could go up to the front, that'd be appreciated. And if you wouldn't mind just providing an introduction for yourselves. Yeah.
Michelle Sepka. Alice.
Welcome.
I'm Zach Sullivan, I'm one of the members from East Montpelier, just I decided to try to get out this summer, yes, meet with some folks from some of the other communities, so I represent, so I guess we know. Maybe a little better.
We are
Great.
expecting one more, I just don't know where he is yet.
Very good. Well, thank you both for attending, and Zach, I understand that like you're preemptively making the rounds to kind of introduce yourself to the other communities. Are there other items that you're hoping to kind of put on our radar, I guess, from the select board?
I don't think so, like, I think the big thing that has been on everybody's radar is what has been happening in legislation.
Yeah.
Right, that is probably the most, it's what's most on most of our school boards across the entire state. So, and it's kind of up in the air on how it's gonna affect us. Zach has some information that he brought along, also to share.
Sure.
And, but that is a big thing because the legislation dictates, our district size. The minimum district size is 4,000. We're at like 1,300 kids in Washington Central. It also dictates the minimum sizes for classrooms, at different grade levels. So that all has impacts on everything that is happening.
Yeah, we do think the guidance we've received from the School Board Association is that they think that the class size minimum would apply to a mixed age classroom. So if you're combined 1 and 2, and the average class size requirement is for 12 students, that you would meet that if you had, say, 6 first graders and 6 second graders. And so I think that when we look at questions about like, is the state going to come in and close a school? I don't think, my understanding is that based on the numbers we have now, we're not going to do that in Calais, and based on the conversation I've had with Jerry, with Stephen, the superintendent, it was that Calais is not facing the kind of drop off in student enrollment that a lot of the other towns have. That being said, I think it would be the formation of new district does put a lot of the other decision making about how a new district would configure its schools,
And has there been any dialogue about how to get to that critical mass with the new districts? And what other, I guess, communities or counties that we would be paired with to kind of get to that 4,000 pupil mark?
Well, I think it's obvious that Montpelier, I would assume, will probably be part of it, even though that doesn't get us to 4,000. So possibly there's, I mean, we're not the ones who are deciding how the redistricting is happening.
The redistricting is done by, there's a committee that is, it's a combination of legislators and retired superintendents and business managers. They were just appointed at the beginning of this month. And so I don't believe they've started to work yet. They're required to propose up to 3 possible maps. But I want to say, is it December 1st or January? I think it's December.
I think it's December. I'm positive it was December that the redistricting.
Yes,
was
December
supposed-
1st. So we don't know, so we would. So with the caveat, this is just speculation, but I think it sort of helps to have a little bit more, more of a picture than just numbers.
Right.
Us, Montpelier and Barry would sort of just barely get to the 4,000, maybe put into Springfield to be safe. sort of going to the larger end, which would be 8,000, you're looking at adding Harwood, which is the area of Waterbury and the Medford Valley, potentially, places around Northfield, and sort of into eastern Orange County, Williamstown, I forget what else is there. Those are all ideas that have been kicked around in the past. We don't know what would actually happen, but I know that that's sort of the idea with aligning with the tech centers, which would sort of be that larger region, has been kicked around. So those are probably the two extremes we're looking at.
Do you know anything about how the governance will be structured? So will, for example, would Calais have a dedicated seat on the board? Or is it just gonna be a sort of at-large board members? This thing just, are they not set?
I would need to actually go back and read the bill, which is 150 pages long. What I can tell you is that one of the things that was created was a committee to create voting boards. And so I think, I need to confirm, but my assumption from that is that they're creating boards that it says the boards need to respect town lines, so presumably combining towns in certain cases. So representation might start to look a little bit more like a legislature.
Right. So you're saying voting boards would be the same, like they would carry the same geographic space as the districts? Or are you distinguishing?
The district would be divided up into voting boards.
Okay.
And so you need to have proportional representation from within those. And you get a little bit of leeway about sort of how, so it doesn't have to be perfectly weighted, but it's, constitutionally, you sort of have about 10% wiggle room.
Okay, I noticed, thank you.
The other question I had was about, I understand that part of the legislation was we'll be moving to a per student budget allotment. And how does that number compare to what Washington Central is currently spending per student?
So currently we are spending, it's a little more, it'd be about a 1.5% decrease. I think we're currently spending 15,247, I wanna say. If I didn't maybe know, I'm saying. Yeah, so I email it to you and not by the newspaper. And that would be decreased into 15,033, and then it adjusts for inflation. I think the much bigger factor is about how it grows. Right, because they're saying, this is the number, and then it's gonna increase for inflation. And we've been increasing at a decent bit above inflation here.
Sure.
Historically, our salary schedule has increased over the long term, it's been pretty much right on with inflation, some years it's higher, some years it's lower, in aggregate, it's been very close. But the healthcare has been much faster than inflation, some of the other facility needs have been a lot faster than inflation, and so that would be more, the initial number is not that far off, but then the growth.
Will it keep up with that?
Will be lower.
One thing that, is to keep in mind that they used a lot of money to help level down our taxes, which means that it's gonna hit us at some point. Again.
It will hit us when they stop running out of one-time funds to kick in. And I will say, this is just my sort of opinion. I'm definitely worried about next year from that perspective, thinking about all of the federal money that the state is using, all the needs that used to be federally funded that are now going to be looking for help from the states. I'm worried that's going to be, it's going to be very, very hard to look at all of those and say, oh, we just want to keep going with this whole education.
Yeah, I guess that's my concern, and certainly I'm gonna just speak like more anecdotally here because I can't remember all of the details, but my understanding is that the cost of the education budgets is largely being pulled from a lot of different buckets within the state budget, and while I think it helps from like a communication standpoint to have like this slow roll and community participation and, participation in the governance structure, and like, some of these things can all be figured out. I've got some real concerns, I guess, about what the next 4 years look like from this funding standpoint, and there being a pretty long lag time from any change in like the financial mechanisms that support the education system and the calculus that goes behind it, and the implementation of that math, and the realities that we're still facing at the local level with schools that are gonna have to make some pretty hard decisions about resources.
Right.
And what do we do in that 3 to 4 year interim period?
Give us the answers.
Yeah, especially the school board said, the school board association just sent out, not that long ago, that 26 million has been withheld from Vermont.
Yeah.
That's a big hole for them. Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, I think the really short answer to your question is we try to manage the system we have, you know, as best we can. I think that, you know, I think we start to look at, you know, are there other ways to share resources, especially if the writing is really on the wall about certain things that could be, that could be combined. If we're going in with, you know, if it's really clear that we're going in with molecular, are there things that we could do?
And
Yeah,
the services that we could share.
That's a little speculative, but I think those are the things we will need to look at, but I think there's a real tension, honestly, between doing things fast enough for what people can, you know, financially bear,
Right.
and what it takes to actually operate the system. Right. And make the changes in a way that's not, you know, that doesn't have to do real harm to the kids in it.
Are the discussions that have been happening over the last couple of years with the consolidation committee and that work, how's that impacted by this legislation? Is that still ongoing? or
It is
that
still, they are still,
on
Daniel was supposed to talk to that,
pause?
yes, he is on that. But we are still having conversations, I could not say because I'm not part of that committee, what their discussions have been. But they are still looking at ways to be creative, to provide services and meet the needs of our kids and give them the best opportunities we can give them.
If Daniel does come, we'd like to circle back to that, because
Yes,
it's a thing of like, I'd really like to get more detail.
Yes.
Get more detail on that, but it's an error of docket.
Maybe. Maybe. There it is.
No pressure, Daniel, but we left all of the question answering to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fairness, yeah, you started early, we started early.
And we just got a question, or just Michelle and I sat here going,
Oh,
we
yeah,
don't know what to say about the configuration committee.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Daniel. The configuration committee was reconvened for the 24-25 school year. And this school year, this most recent school year, we added community members as well as school board members. So Anna Matheson was the community member from Calais. I was the school board representative from Calais, and each town had a community member and a school board member. And we didn't make a ton of progress, to be frank, but I think what I would say about it is that we're focused on, I think a question was raised a lot last fall about the why of the configuration, and some people were saying, well, it's obviously your intent to save money, but show us how you're saving money. Or others were saying it's obviously your intent to consolidate control, but show us how that is an efficient use of taxpayer dollars. And so now we're taking a step back and not prescribing something before we identify a clear problem or a clear goal. And we're looking for sort of programmatic goals that we want to pursue. And a big sort of theme of that, I would say, is this concept of the community schools, which is very broad and hard to define, but the U32 principal that I get to teach at is sort of a leader in this field, and she got a state grant to develop sort of a community schools model when she was at Calais, and we hired a community schools coordinator for the district, and that person is trying to understand what the meaning of our schools are to our communities and vice versa. And we're gonna try to sort of invest in what's successful in terms of like, a dialogue and relationship between one and the other. And that might look like, you know, some examples are like extended hours before and after school as sort of like a recreation space. It might look like, inviting community members in to teach sort of auxiliary pieces of the curriculum to students. It might look like sharing healthcare resources that the school coordinates and primarily funds, but sharing those with community in some cases. It might look like hosting childcare centers in your schools. Something that was hotly debated this past spring for Worcester, but the school district, I think, I can't speak for all the board members, but my feeling was that a lot of the school board members were really excited by that in concept, and it was just the details that sort of made the plan fall off the rails. But these are all sort of pieces of the community schools theme that we're considering and evaluating. And if a new configuration, i.e. like reutilizing like the schools and the infrastructure that the district owns, using it differently makes sense in order to achieve those goals, then now that's what we would propose. But I don't think, to put a finer point on it, I don't think anyone is contemplating proposing like the closure of any schools this fall, or even for a vote next spring. I do think that the thought of the sixth grade moving up to U32, if it makes sense, is something that we would consider proposing. And if that was proposed, the decision lies with the school board, and the decision would be made probably 10 months in advance of that transition happening. So with plenty of time for a thoughtful transition for the sixth graders. But we haven't seen sort of like a comprehensive list of advantages and disadvantages to doing that. To some of us, to myself, it makes some sense intuitively, because I think we've heard that a stronger middle school model makes a lot of sense, and you can develop middle school, a more specialized middle school curriculum with 6th, 7th, and 8th, all in one place. But I think there are people, you know, thoughtful people come down on both sides of that. So it's still up in the air, but it is something I think we're considering and probably bringing to the full board for consideration this fall. That's all I have to say about configuration.
Just a point on that, you know, a small point is that would then be in alignment also with where Montpelier is, correct?
My
Yes.
understanding is they actually have a 5th to 8th grade
Fifth
middle school
grade,
model,
okay.
not 6th.
Not six, okay,
So that would be a step farther than we're considering.
yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
okay, thank you.
I'll welcome anybody to disagree with me on this one, but I think the like decision to look at configurations is always a really hotly contested dynamic dialogue. And from my like personal observation, I would say even in the community of Calais, it seems like there's been kind of an evolution on the community's position to consider certain configuration questions and that I don't, does the board have like plans to maybe capture some of that feedback more broadly? And speaking from the position of working on the select board, you know, I think it is very easy in the context of board meetings to say, you know, show up to the board meeting, we're going to be talking about this, and let's get an idea of how everybody feels about this particular concept is democratic in a way, but also it kind of provides the opportunity for the influence to be skewed toward vocal minority.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a reflection of the evolution of sentiment in the broader community. And I certainly try to be sensitive of how we kind of collect those data points to help inform our own decision making. I'm wondering if you guys are thinking about implementing resources or tools to kind of help broaden that pool of input in these interim years, I guess, that we're considering certain decisions that will have to be made and maybe trying to flush out concepts that we would like to propose to some of the committees that are going to be influencing the formation of districts and governance and all of this stuff. Has there been dialogue about that?
I guess one thing I would say is that,
Is that too much of a loaded question?
well, we hotly debated at our last committee meeting, like, how much of a proposal you put to the public before it's like fully considered, thought out and planned. And I think what I heard was that the district leadership, superintendent in particular, wants a fairly comprehensive plan before putting it out to a community forum and having it considered by the public.
Mhm.
And I personally voted against that. I wanted sort of an earlier, messier conversation where, you know, the district stuck their head out and threw something out there and got feedback earlier in the process before a huge amount of time and thought had been put into like every last detail. But I think it's hard. That's a vulnerable position to put oneself in. And so I don't think we necessarily decided to go that route, but I think there is this probably faster than most want, but it's a timeline faster than most people want for making a decision about the middle school this fall. I think we will have community meetings and things like that. I think we brainstormed a lot of different other types of outreach to undertake. We may come to you all with a more pointed request soon about co-hosting some kind of event where people could bring feedback and input. I think we'll do an online survey again and, you know, try everything else that might stick. Because we've been disappointed with the level of sort of early stage engagement in the past, but it's not an easy problem to solve.
Right.
Yeah, we learned the hard way, the last year. About the feedback, and there are a lot of voices that are never heard from because they are afraid to come out and speak. That is something that can happen. Some of us have really lived this. So I know we have a communication group now who's working on pieces. Which was new to the board, because we didn't have it before. So we're trying to get things out there and come up with more creative ways to get those stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that we also. I think that the board doesn't really have a culture of sort of, you know, bridging this point from we're elected, therefore we are in a political role, therefore we have an obligation to a certain amount of constituent service, and sometimes that, when you're running a competitive political campaign, you're forced to go out there, really meet people where they are, not just wait for people to go, oh, I'll look at your website, or I'll, come to the thing. And when you don't have a competitive race, you don't. And so I think we don't, I think that sort of in an environment where it's a little bit of arm twisting to get a person to run for a seat.
Right.
We have less of that culture, and I think would be helpful, and maybe, I don't know if with the change in districts, with the larger districts, will that spawn more competitive seats, and will that require more recommend outreach?
Well, and I think it's this middle time, right,
Yeah.
where we had this formidable legislation, which does not actually lay out the full plan. Right, so you all are in a difficult space, because that's a lot to do, but likely it's not. So. I know I'm saying things here, it's just, my point is that like, it is not, we're not, we're not through the gate at all, and that is still a lot, and I think that limiting, just before you got here, Dana, we were also chatting about making the point, that Zach was making the point that the coverage of the budget this year is a helpful relief for Vermonters, but it's not gonna be an enduring relief, and so the pressure will be formidable.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I step on your?
Just one little suggestion, for what it's worth, one of the things I think that your board's always been good at is. Development and like courses of study and like sticking at it through the year. It probably would make sense to really delve into change management, and brush up on those skills. Because we're about to go through the biggest transformation in education in the state in centuries, right? And it's gonna be hard for people, right? And you're gonna be at the forefront of it. They're gonna blame you.
Well, and I think being informed with, for the select board to be informed and connected with you all and meet you and know you and understand what the issues are is also really valuable. Because we can help to the extent we're engaged with, the Calais citizens that we can help, open those avenues of communication and share the information that's, coming out of the board, to the extent we can, I'm not saying, we're not an extension, but the collaboration needs to be there for us to understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're probably not that far behind you.
Yeah.
Transformation.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, every conversation that we have about collaborating with other communities on shared resources, I mean, it's the same undertow of conversation, and I think the communities are gonna be, wrestling with the same sense of lost autonomy as we try to find how to share these resources. And I think the instinct is to go to the community and try to get that input as early as possible. What do you want it to be? But then, and that's not the wrong instinct, but if you don't provide structure to it, you're going to run into the situation where you've got people who just don't want to, will entrench themselves in not wanting change. And that's not necessarily productive. And, I am always grateful for our staff and their ability to look for opportunities to include polls in mailings that we're doing and find efficient ways to get that input from the community in a way that helps bring some proportionality to the feedback that we're getting from the community, and I'd say, yeah, that if the board puts some thought into like how we can have these conversations on a more regular basis to make sure that we're taking advantage of every opportunity to provide feedback as you define what those channels need to be or when you want them to come in, like that's where I think I see a real opportunity to get on the same page and keep rowing in the same direction through ambiguous waters.
It's interesting that both our district and our career center district have identified all these ways in which we think we want change, and the career center is in the process of preparing a bond for funding a big, the career center district is 18 different towns, it's something like 4 school districts. But we were getting a presentation from our board representatives, that district, and someone asked if there was a concern that, the 454 was gonna derail these plans, and his response was that the general feeling was that we should run until apprehended. And I think that it really comes down to like this idea of being proactive and building your structures. And I think you're less likely to be forced back, to square one, if you actually have a coherent plan you've been working on, and maybe it's not completed, maybe you haven't pulled the trigger on it, but it's moving forward, and you're moving forward with it confidently, and it's clearly the right thing for your district. So I think that's sort of an ethos that we're developing too.
Yeah, we've also started doing some work with one others to look at what do some of the possible configuration piece of work. And this is just a political analysis. I do not think there's any chance that we are just merging with Montpelier before everything. Before everything else gets changed again, but I think it sort of puts out a roadmap of, what makes sense, let us do the work of saying what really makes sense for us. Before we go into this larger district. I mentioned the career center is another, a good example, looking at the landscape of our needs. Nobody realistically thinks, oh, we need fewer trades. And so if we need to invest in that, let's just go and invest in it, knowing that that we don't know exactly how it's gonna be dealt with, but if we need more tradespeople, let's make the investment in training them.
Well, we're pushing up against our next item, and that's a check in with the planning commission, and I think that's fairly timely. We're also gonna be talking with CVRPC on kind of a separate issue, obviously, but my one last plug for like thinking about this holistically is like these conversations are being had from the municipality level to the emergency services level, to the schools, I'm not gonna say that it seems like everybody's just thinking about like their own little silo there, but like if we think about funding models and even analytical tools for what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, like part of this seems like it's gonna have to be what makes sense for the region, and are you creating enough overlap in each one of those silos so that when you're building a tax rate, you don't have a school district that is like this odd shape to get to 40 or 4,000 pupils.
Right.
And then a municipality planning zone that is this area, and getting everybody confused about who's partnering on what resources. And I would hope that people much smarter than me are thinking about like what that looks like from the 30,000 foot view. Because what we don't have as a municipality or even as a school board are like the individual analytical resources to test out these models and make these plans. So let us know who we need to speak to make sure that we're helping to push that message through. And thank you for your service and your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we would welcome like further invitations from you all this fall and winter. You're feeling in the dark about what's going on. But yeah, I think Michelle's right, the communications committee is a big step forward, so hopefully the public information will be out there, but if it's lacking, let us know.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Jared.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Claudia,
Oh, sorry.
It's here for trails consideration.
Yeah. Well, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye, Jared, a couple more moments.
Any questions?
Oh,
Yeah, just a quick comment, the state does have a regional government study commission that's kind of on pause right now, but they're like, all those layers.
yeah,
Makes sense, I think that's that's kind of doing what you're saying is kind of make all the regional units work together as opposed to being kind of disconnected.
well, we should find out how we should work with them more directly. Thank you. Yeah. I knew there were smarter people out there. Yeah. Interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Claudia, so welcome.
Thanks.
Do you, or would you mind just doing a brief intro, I guess, of yourself and your interest in the Trails Committee, appointment? It's not a contested position, but, and you did, supply us with a letter of interest, and have plenty of support, but for the public, it would just be helpful to just have an intro.
So, my name is Claudia Welch, and I like doing service for the community and have limited time and resources to do that. But this was something that I had to have time to do. And I love walking and I want to get to know Calais trails. So those kind of things dovetail pretty nicely. And, love all you guys who I know. And I think it'll be fun to work together with whoever's on the committee, and it's about it. I don't have any like huge plans, like here's how we revamp the Calais trails and pave them with gold or whatever.
Well, let us know. We're always interested in those, I guess, but it sounds like you'd had the opportunity to talk with Tom about the position and what's involved, or.
A little bit, we haven't talked, but we've emailed,
Okay.
so it's very doable.
Yeah, you understand how often they meet and that kind of,
Yeah, once a year.
and they do some trail work.
Yes,
Yes.
so that
So
sounds
you'll
fun.
be out there and.
I have my own set of clippers.
Okay.
I won't have to come begging for those.
Loppers.
Yeah, flappers, clippers, little saws.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Good. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments or concerns? No?
Just happy to have a volunteer.
Yeah, thank you for, yeah, we're likely to just kind of deliberate on decisions toward the end. And I don't imagine that this is gonna be a challenging one. But Barbara will be in touch with details about the appointment. Do we have multiple?
Just Shana, for the minutes, that this is the 3-year term that will expire in 2028.
Yes. You're comfortable with that long-term commitment of
God
several
willing.
years.
For it.
Well, thank you again for your interest in serving in the Trails Committee. We'll be in touch.
Great, you need anything else from me?
I don't think so.
All right, thanks for everything you guys do, it's
Oh.
amazing.
Thank you. Jared, that didn't buy you a lot of time, but
It's okay.
welcome. Good to see you.
Yeah.
So we've got to check in with the planning commission
Yeah.
and hear kind of where things stand and what's the update on the conservation section of the town plan and what you're thinking for timelines for all of that.
Yeah.
So we've been working really hard through the public comments.
Yeah.
Our spreadsheet of all the public comments. And we've actually been getting through those pretty quick. What we've noticed is the public comments are either very specific that we can go, oh yeah, we missed that, or oh yeah, that's a good idea, or I wanna put a bar in it, like, well, okay, like that's not in the town plan, right? And so it's actually been a lot smoother working through the public comments than we had originally thought, so that's been good. And I'd say we've gotten through 75% of it, actually. So we've pushed through that really well. Before I talk conservation, we have noticed that we need to spend some time on energy. So one place we thought that was really a problem was the data that we had gotten from CVRDC. And we were talking about ways how we could get more concrete data. But as we've talked about it, we think we should just use the CVRDC data just because that's the data everyone is using when they make their town plans. So if it's off for everybody. And that we wouldn't want to be a complete outlier in some way. So that's where we've got a good number of comments to work through. A lot of them from job breakdown. And those are all really good, but we gotta work through them. So we're gonna spend some specific time on energy. The Conservation Commission and the Natural Environment section. What we are going to do is we have met with Conservation Commission members. And what we plan to do is have multiple meetings, roughly 4 meetings, 5 meetings. One, they're gonna come and present to us that draft that they created and sort of go through. We've asked them, what are the priorities, right? Where are the policy restrictions? And those kind of things. And we're trying to separate out those policy prescriptions from what could be an educational standalone document. Because that document that they created is fantastic. But it is so much more of a educational document than the town plan most likely needs. So we're gonna try to parse out where are the policy prescriptions that they are, considering, and where's the educational stuff that we can put in a supplement. That could be, if you're looking to learn more, come to this, we have another document. So they're gonna come present us, to us, we're giving them a whole meeting to just do that. And then we will present a redlined version of things from our natural resources section to them. And then one of our board members has a plan. We're gonna put together a process, if you've ever seen it, of World Cafe, of how to get through lots of information in short amount of time. That we're gonna have 2 or 3 meetings of that, trying to pinpoint specific things that we can all agree need to be in the plan. And so we actually have a pretty good, we've had a meeting about a meeting that was about a meeting to talk about a plan for this. And so, but we're there. I actually think at this point, we are looking to be able to be done with natural resources by the end of October. With then the hopes that it does get to the holiday season, and so that does throw things in there, but that by the turn of 2026, we can be ready to then get that done, maybe even at the beginning of 2026, start that, again, that 30-day notice, 15-day notice hearings to then be done, hopefully before town meeting will be up. And so right now we have it pretty planned out of how to move forward. At this point, I think it's just natural environment and energy. As we've been going through them, we're finding more spelling errors and the page number was wrong here, like, we're just now finding those things. And so I actually think we're in a pretty good spot, but we could be by the first year, be ready to do the process again, to go through it publicly to then adopt. But it's actually going really well. I think we have a good process to work with Conservation Commission. We had a good conversation, and I think there was some disconnect before we met, and I think we met, Barry, you were there, and then I do think there was a really good conversation, and I think everybody kind of went, okay, we know what we're doing now. And, I think we're in a good place to move forward, so. But that's the plan, is to be done hopefully by the end of 2025. So that at the beginning of 2026, we can do that approval process and then be done.
Not to add another layer or two to this whole thing, but I think a valid point was raised that, you know, the other major hat that the planning commission wears is a review of town regulations. And historically, that's immediately followed the adoption of a town plan, and I'm wondering if there has been an effort to track where certain changes or policy objectives have been added or modified in the town plan, where there could be recommendations to enhance or modify the regulations, land use regulations as well,
That has
to
been, yeah,
help achieve those, because
we've been
those,
keeping track of those.
okay,
So that we know where those changes have happened, so that we can go back. And then compare to land use regulations to the town plan, to make sure that they do align.
Hmm.
And what we have a rough plan for next year, which is every other meeting is a meeting about the land use regulations.
oh, okay.
And so that we are sort of constantly making sure that that's going on. So that once the town plan is approved and it's in, we can then, every other meeting, take time and go through it, but we've been keeping track of the changes as we've been going. We know, I mean, that's gonna be a lift, but we know where to go back into regulations to make sure that it all aligns. But we will have to do that work, yes.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I guess I would say, Jared, select board's been thinking a lot this year about the financial future. And I wonder if the planning commission with this next iteration has given that some thought and how that might inform a plan. And, you know, just to summarize it, we're going from an environment of scarcity to potentially super scarcity.
Right.
And how does that affect what the town can do?
We have talked about it. We don't think the town plan necessarily prescribes anything more. But I do think we're gonna have to take a look at that. Because we have talked about that, we've talked about, just like they just did with schools, right, like that we're gonna be, I mean, you said it at one meeting, and that really, the alarm bells in my mind, where you said we might have to worry about how we're going to be self-sufficient as a town, or as much as possible. And so a town plan, we're gonna have to look at that, and we have talked about it. We don't think that right now there's anything really big in it that's like a big ticket item that's like, you know, but it may have to be reworked in a whole, not just, you're not prescribing anything new, it may be new streams of revenue or cutting back, whatever it is.
Priorities might.
Have to change.
Different than when you started, I mean. It's
Correct.
inherent.
There was discussion in this section about either managing town services, which I think is where it is, about talking about the budget realities going into the future. And that putting in language in there that basically says, we also understand that this is an 8-year document, and that we don't know what things look like in the future. And so some of it may just be that our way of wording it so that we can say, we understand that. And that, when things happen, we have to be able to say, no, we can't do that, or we shall, may, must.
Or we wanna proactively do this because
Correct.
it will help.
Correct, if it's new funding streams or grants or different things, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that the real liability is that, you know, this policy document gets so unwieldy to open up every time we want to open it up, but if you look at like how the verbiage is written around the legislation, around who has the authority to make changes to it and at what frequency, I mean, it's self-imposed, so I think to Barbara's point, like. If we're defining a structure in a way to get community input relative to an acute need to reprioritize competing interests for a period of time, like that. To open up a section of the plan and say that, well, we've got some really specific input on what we want to focus our resources and efforts on for, energy development or, the cost of energy or bringing those down as a community, through either collaborations with other, whatever it is, whatever the idea is, like to have a process established for opening that up for discussion in the interim period and adopting that modification to a plan, I think would be a really informative and helpful process.
Yeah, because it's not a short process. Right, for the town plan to do that.
Right.
And so I think us finding language that we can put in it that allows us some flexibility within it. If we can figure that out, is what we need to do. I just don't know what that language necessarily is, and that's what we have to look at. Is how do we put it in there so that this town plan is prescriptive as it's supposed to be. But as things change, and sometimes huge changes as they may be, how do we live within that without having to completely take, almost 2 months just for a change here or a change there? Like, how do we put language in it to give us some flexibility as we move forward? If a funding stream completely, right, dries up and we're, 15% cut from a budget, what are we supposed to do? Do we have to now take 2 months just to write up a process to just get that done? Or can we insert language now that allows us some flexibility to be able to move within it if we can? That might be a CBRPC question too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, one would think that CPRPC is thinking about this or
I
has,
would think that they
and
have.
because we're not the only ones having this thought, so.
So that's a conversation I just need to have with them, is
Right.
what kind of language needs to exist in this to give us some flexibility to be adaptable as things change.
Which
We know they're going to.
in a business plan, you might have a contingency chapter.
Correct.
Right, that's really what we're talking about.
Exactly.
That is.
What principles or resources are there available if we have to make a little difficult?
Correct, and the thing we've talked about before is, oh, should we add this supplemental for this or that? But then there gets the worry of, well, if that's added, is that now the legally binding part of, so like there has to be. Like,
Yes.
right, so how do we do that where it's, this thing allows us to do this, but it's not fully. Like, so, but we can have that conversation with CBRPC, because I do think it's important, because we all know that setting a plan for 8 years. And just going, oh, it'll be fun. It's like that picture with the fire in the background, and the little dog's like, everything's fine. Like, that's what, you don't wanna get there in 3 years and have everything completely different, and you have this inflexible plan that takes months to change. And so we need to figure out how we.
Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, and October 21st. Yeah, so,
Thank you.
yeah, CBRPC is coming to planning on October 21st to talk about the future land use maps.
Yeah.
Which is, it's perfect for what we're talking about, because that's where a lot of the Natural Environment Conservation Commission, Planning Commission sort of disconnect has been. Is, what are we supposed to do if this area is protected and not this, but what's future, like, we don't know. And so this new tool that CBRPC is gonna help us with.
Well, I think there's a lot of efficiency in trying to manage those maps like on a regional basis as opposed to like state, regional, town, like if everybody's managing their own map interfaces and it's just like.
Which is one of the things we said to conservation commissions, that we need to understand priorities.
Right.
Because everything can't be priority 1. Right? That's not realistic to say, well, everything is priority, and we can't do that. So what is our top priorities? What are our we really wanna do this, and what are our, we'd like to, but if we don't, it's okay. Like, we have to prioritize that. And that, those future land use maps from CBRC are gonna be really helpful, so they'll be there the 21st.
Thank you. Thanks for getting that scheduled. Appreciate it.
We're now halfway there.
Are
I
there
feel
any?
like every time I come, we're a little bit farther than we were before, but at least we're actually moving.
Just keep moving.
Just keep moving, just
moving.
keep swimming.
Yeah. Thanks, Jared.
You're welcome.
And next up, on the agenda, we have, check-in with the, Friends of, Calais Town Hall.
No.
Or, no,
You know,
It was-
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, Jared.
Oh. Yep, the Winooski Natural Resources Conservation District. Come on up. Welcome, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And we'll try to be brief, we do have a few slides.
Oh, thank you. Kari and I attended kind of a kickoff meeting that you guys had last week. Was that- it
So
seems like ages ago, but it was last
it'll
week.
be the same slides.
So a lot of really great information. Welcome to the meeting, and I'll let you guys go through the intro. You're more equipped than I am.
Thank you. So, yeah, thanks for inviting us, allowing us to speak for the Winooski Natural Resources Conservation District, and we're gonna talk about the action plan for Sagan Pond / Woodbury Lake. So just a little bit about us, the Conservation District. So we came into existence in the 30s/40s in the wake of the Dust Bowl. It was recognized that although it was a natural disaster, if people had taken better care of their land, it wouldn't have been as bad as it was. And so the government asked the states to set up these districts to help people conserve their soil better. The districts are effectively like quasi municipalities, so we are subdivisions of government. We're not federal, we're not state, we're kind of somewhere in the middle. Vermont has 14 districts. We are the Winooski district, and we're the biggest, both by land area and by population served. We cover Chittenden and Washington County, and a few towns in Orange County as well. Currently, there are 4 staff members, myself as the manager for the district, Lucas, who's here with us as the conservation specialist, and then we have 2 staff members who work primarily with farmers, both Kara and Heather. I'll talk a little bit about what they do with farmers. And as a special unit of government, we are governed by elected officials, so we have a board of 5 members who are elected from within our service area. They're listed there. Currently, they're, I believe, all Washington County, and then we have a couple of associates. One of them is from Chittenden County, but we're heavily Washington County skewed at the moment.
So kind of what we do is, to put it simply, we promote the wise use of sustainable development and conservation of our district's natural resources. This includes natural resource management projects, everything from agriculture, forestry, urban conservation, water quality. The statement at the bottom kind of brings it all together. We connect residents and communities with education and technical assistance to implement on the ground projects. And kind of what I just said, so. This is just kind of a quick example of some of our ongoing projects. We do this program called Trees for Streams, which is essentially helping landowners identify and implement riparian buffer planting projects. This is one in Jericho. Everything from scoping to writing up the grant to actually planting the trees and then doing operations and maintenance afterwards.
We also do, in some ways, larger projects. So we removed a dam last year in Washington that was falling down, and we have a couple of culvert replacements that are in the works. So we replaced culverts on private and town land. That's a picture of one that should be coming out next summer, primarily for organism passage. So fish can't get through that now, but they will be when we're able to when we're done. And we also upsize them for flood resiliency. So it's a double whammy.
So yeah, just a bit about what our agriculture conservation specialists do. They help farmers create nutrient management plans, provide them with technical assistance, do outreach, put them in touch with funding resources. Well, I missed a couple, but that's the general gist of it, I'd say.
Yep.
And they also have, we have some funding currently from the USDA. There are a number of farms down in the Richmond area that lost a lot of land to the flooding last year along the main stem of the Winooski. And so we're working with those farms and the USDA to armor the banks so that they can lose less land every time it floods and continue to farm effectively. So kind of why we're here today is Lake Watershed Action Plan happening on Sabin Pond, also known as Woodbury Lake. In short, the plan is basically a comprehensive study to identify clean water projects in the watershed, but identifying problem areas, but also areas of resilience that you want to, promote more resilience in the future. So yeah, that statement kind of does a good job explaining it. The state identified Sabin Pond, not because it has poor water quality, but because there were like trending levels towards poor water quality. So like, it's important to, get it before it gets worse, but I mean, as you all know, the Sabin Pond watershed is well forested and like, is, great compared to, Lake Carmine or some other lakes around the state, so, that's kind of the brief overview of what we're doing.
And just so people know, a portion of Calais is in the water.
Yes, portion of Calais, and then, also Valley Lake and Greenwood Lake are part of the watershed.
Right, that's why we're here tonight, is that even though the lakes are mostly in Woodbury, a section of the watershed of those lakes is in Calais, so.
Yeah, so going into it a bit more, we are pretty much studying the roads, the wetlands, stream assessments and lakefront property assessments. That's like the general overall scope of this study. We plan to get this finished by mid-fall. Yeah, so we'll be out in the field this summer with 2 partner consultants, kind of just walking around doing assessments. Yeah. Yeah, so the Lake Watershed Action Plan is completely free and non-regulatory for landowners. Like, there's nothing that landowners have to do. This is basically just transparency to let you know what's going on. The hope is to identify future clean water projects, improve water quality, and then, identify opportunities to preserve water quality. So the road assessments, stream assessments, wetland assessments, and shoreline assessments will kind of give us the overall idea of where to target our areas of resilience.
So this is, again, we kind of mentioned this already, but overview of the watershed itself, the picture on the left there shows the watershed, and it's basically, there's like a bottom slice of Woodbury Lake that is in Calais, and some portions south of that. So, much of the watershed is north of you, but, you do have some drainage that goes into Sabin Pond.
Yeah, we did a boat tour the other day around the lake, and the little part of Calais, you can just tell is so much more well forested than Woodbury, because Calais had shoreline protection regulations far before Woodbury did, so you can just see where it cuts off into Calais.
So the process, so we met with state scientists earlier this spring to kind of come up with a plan. We finished that in May, and then we collected a whole bunch of data and did what we call a desktop analysis. So again, different map layers to identify potential opportunity areas before we went out into the field. And that we finished up in May as well. We had our community stakeholders meeting last week, which was kind of sharing those things with the public and getting their input back to see if we missed anything, the things that we should be focusing on, that we weren't focusing on, that sort of thing. And then for the rest of the summer, it's just gonna be the assessments, right? So the wetlands assessments, the roads assessments, the stream assessments, and then the shoreline assessments. And so Lucas, myself will be out on the lake, we are partnering with 2 other consulting firms that will be out on the lake, and have been for the summer so far. So you may have seen them out there, spent time on the lake. We're hoping to finish all those things up. They're in no particular order, but to finish them all up by the end of the summer. That's the plan. Once we do finish those up, we'll sit down together and we'll come up with what we think is a priority list of the most valuable projects. Those projects where there's landowner interest, where the cost is feasible, and where they can improve water quality a lot for the cost that they're going to take. Once we have that list, we're gonna do another community forum to kind of bounce that off the towns and the people who live there and say, does this sound right to you guys? And that we hope to happen in the fall.
September, maybe September, October. And then once we get their feedback, we incorporate that feedback, we'll publish the action plan, and we hope that that's winter. Which includes a priority list of projects that we plan to implement, and kind of going off of that. Implementing projects is the goal, like, we're not just here to do the study and walk away, like, we want to do the study, create a priority list of projects, implement the projects, and then like. Do the operation and maintenance afterwards, and just like make sure that it actually happens. That's the hope, so yeah, full circle, funding to complete all the projects, is the goal. Yeah, so just some take home points, again, this is entirely paid for by the state, the town, it costs the towns and the landowners nothing, it's entirely non-regulatory, so everything we're doing here is voluntary, we're looking for voluntary restoration projects, if someone's property comes up as a priority project, it's entirely voluntary whether they do it or not. There is a lot of money available though from the state to do clean water focused projects, and so people should know that if there is something that can be done on their property, there is money available to help them do that. The end goal of this Lake Watershed Action Plan is a roadmap, basically this priority list of projects. That's kind of like the end product that we're looking for, and then we're gonna stick around and try to pick away at those projects with building landowners over time. That may take, years, even a decade to get all those projects done, but that's the idea. It's a community-based assessment, so the more input we get from everybody, the better product we're gonna have at the end. We're kind of making the rounds, trying to speak to as many people as possible. And so we need your input to make this successful. And then last slide, really good save. So how can you help or participate? Well, we want to publicize the process, pretty much transparency, letting people know what's going on, so they're not kind of confused about what's going on, so. Front porch forum, flyer posting, Facebook, Instagram, social media, just getting the word out of what's going on. Making residents aware for lake-wise assessments, this is something that I'll be taking the lead on, which is essentially going out with landowners around their property and assessing there's 4 sections in the criteria of the lake-wise assessment. It's looking at the driveway, the roof, the recreation area behind the house, and then the shoreline. And the shoreline, and basically what I'll do is we'll talk about it, suggestions, recommendations, and then I'll write up a technical report for you, which is probably between 10 and 15 pages, depending on, how manicured your lawn is versus how, vegetated it is and whatnot, but it's really meaningful assessment. I love doing them, getting out and talking to people. And yeah, so we'd like to get a bunch of those on the calendar as well for the summer. So if with shoreline properties, we'd love to get out and, speak to them whether, they need work or don't need work.
Are you speaking
any-
more broadly, like, for any of the lakes or ponds, or
Yes,
just
yeah,
for this
so
watershed?
Just this watershed.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for this watershed, yeah, within the watershed, so save in Woodbury, elsewhere not eligible. For this particular funding.
Right.
Yeah, there may be other opportunities.
No more questions about that.
Yeah, and bringing problem areas to our attention, so maybe if there's drainage, I know there was flooding issues, like. Stuff that we may, like, we don't live in Calais or Woodbury, so stuff that, you may see that we don't see, is like very important, good for our notes and taking points there. And then coming community forums like this, our kickoff meetings, the select board meetings. Just trying to be as transparent as possible about, where we are in the study and, moving forward with people, just, together, not, keeping it private, so. We'll now take any questions that you all have. Thank you again.
Thank you. My first question, I guess, is about the funding and I guess like ownership of like the assets that you guys are generating, and kind of like how those live and like what. It was striking to me that in the stakeholders meeting that like there's a ton of surveying work and inventory that's going, and like just analytical work that's going into it, and then GIS resource that is very specific to that watershed. And so I guess the first question is like, what presumably you'd be going through this process for other watersheds as well, once this one's complete, and then I guess, so what's the timeline for that?
Yeah, that's up to the state, so they are the ones who kind of pick the watershed and then pick when the study happens.
Gotcha.
So, we didn't pick this, the state picked it, and then we picked up the grant to do the work.
Gotcha.
And then in the future, I know Nelson Pond is another one that's kind of on their list. of things that they wanna do, and we did some likewise assessments there last summer.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like, it's usually like a two-part process. You start with a bunch of likewise assessments in one year, and then kind of like do the watershed plan the next year.
Okay,
And so I think the Nelson Fund's kind of on the radar, but I don't work for the state, so I don't know exactly. I
right,
know Lake Champlain direction, like Mounds Bay is something that they've talked about, is another one that's kind of on their radar. But yeah, so that's somewhat of a black box to us. As you know.
and this kind of ties into the comment that I made earlier, is that you guys are generating some pretty useful assets, in just kind of identifying and maintaining inventory of problem areas and projects, like, that obviously aren't all gonna be able to get funded, and multiple agencies are gonna wanna be on the same page, about those, so I guess where long-term are these things gonna live, and like, how accessible are they gonna be to the municipalities? There's so much time spent talking about like road inventory and road conditions, which are, conversations that we have to have, at least on an annual basis when we're certifying our road maintenance practices for our permit. And having a resource like that is flexible. That can be updated with that inventory and accessible at the municipality level, so it can be more actionable, I think would be awesome.
Right, yeah, so we turn over those resources to the state as a deliverable for us on the grant, but we also keep a copy, and I see no reason why we can't give those map layers to you when we're done.
Great.
To even be somewhere to store them.
Yeah.
Well, the plan will be public, like published online. The plan will be published public for like the Esri maps.
Oh, right.
Our GIS maps. I'm guessing this is sort of more what you're interested in.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to explore like standing up our own mapping resources, and we have our own subscription to certain GIS resources.
GIS map, pretty powerful.
Yeah,
I think you can add layers just wholesale.
yeah,
Right, and so I think, yeah, I see no reason why we couldn't give you those layers just for that.
okay,
If you want that.
great.
Yeah, you may need an ARCS subscription already to house them, but I don't know that for certain.
We have one.
Yeah, we have any.
Yeah, well, okay.
But making sure that just compatibility between those resources, is, would be pretty easy to figure out.
Yep. Yeah, the more like, even if we're not involved, the more of these projects they get done, the better, so if it's the town that does them.
Everybody wins.
Yeah, everybody wins.
The
Yeah.
projects happen.
Yeah.
We're just identifying them. So,
Well, thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions, about the program?
Really helpful.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, and keep us posted, on how we can help with the community
Yeah.
outreach and.
The best thing is to just, share around the link for Lakewise assessments, just getting folks involved and like having them sign up. It takes like an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, and basically I'll just walk around and talk to them. They don't even have to they have to be there for like 10 minutes, and then I'll just kind of like do my thing, and then within 1 to 2 weeks, I'll send out a report, and it's like, helpful for them, helpful for us, so.
Have you had participation from Calais residents?
Sorry.
Have you had participation in the Lakewise assessments from Calais residents?
We
Like
had-
Woodbury shoreline, cause
Most of it was Harris Cove properties, like Woodbury, last year. I didn't see much of Alice.
I know it's a little bit separate from what they're doing.
And it's a
but
much smaller geographic area.
Lakewise is broader. We just had a Lakewise assessment on our property in Curtis Park.
Nice, yeah.
And I know that they've done a bunch for this recently.
Yeah.
Which is separate from this.
Sure.
It is available.
It's
for all the
available,
places.
yeah.
Yeah, anyone has a Green Wood or Dog Pond Valley Lake, they would be eligible as well, so. Yeah, it's completely free and non-regulatory. I always mention that to people, they don't have to do anything, it's like free.
What's that?
It's Valley Lake got a different name than
Dog Pond.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like.
Yeah, like
Okay,
save it as the way the state has it registered.
no, I got it,
Yeah,
I
so
got it.
all of our documentation deliverables are all safe, have to be safe.
I think it's just a strategy for like dog whistling, like out of staters, if they don't know what the actual name. Thank you, appreciate it.
Appreciate it, thank you. I'll leave my business card.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And then I'll email that for them. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great.
Going.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Now. I think we have got the Friends of Calais, right? Right?
Yes.
You got it.
Friends.
Friends of Calais Town Hall. Sorry. Welcome.
Hey.
So we're just kind of rolling through check-ins with a lot of different organizations and trying to get into habit and structure of doing check-ins before budgeting season so that we have a low stakes conversation before we start having high stakes conversations with regard to like budget funding and that sort of thing. So in part, this is just kind of a check-in on what the Friends are working on, and then also just kind of some dialogue around what is generally an annual review and renewing of the agreement between the Friends and the town usage and that sort of thing, which generally happens every September-ish, roughly, give or take on our consistency. So with that, I guess you guys have a update on various projects,
Yeah, we do, the Friends.
Yeah.
Chair of the Friends of Calais Town Hall. Kind of an exciting time beyond Friends. We recently had our planning session. And we had some long, hard conversations about where we've been. What we've been trying to accomplish, how successful or unsuccessful we've been in trying to recognize our mission goals. But we realized too that we were at a point where we were really ready to make some major forward progress. So we identified some short-term objectives, which you probably heard about. We're doing some work upstairs, putting in some sound and light gear. All said and done, we'll probably invest about 45,000 in that project. We plan on holding a grand unveiling event to show it off to the community. Probably we're thinking early September timeframe for that. We set a tentative date of September 7th. We also are going to conduct an annual meeting sometime after we've had this unveiling and also after the production of Gospel Hall of Players putting on in early October. So we penciled in a tentative date for the annual meeting on 10/15. And we really look at this as an opportunity to reintroduce ourselves to the community. And hopefully bring in some new blood in the world. Because as we met and discussed our planning, we realized we could use some more talent. And we also realized that we faced some of the same challenges that Selectboard has faced in trying to find volunteers. So we thought, well, if we have a couple of wins under our belt with the grand unveiling, Christie's show, and a few other things we have in mind, might be a good time to reach out and see if people want to join us. We also looked at some long-term goals, and actually, before I get into those, Artie, maybe you want to say a little bit more about Sound and Light here?
Yeah, so we're really excited. I know there's a little bit of a sense of, you know, what's been going on there, why it's been taking so long, but we procured a pretty big donation, an anonymous donation a couple years ago, I think it was a year ago now. And we came up with this plan to install really high quality, really professional sound. Like you're upstairs to make it, we're to do it, let's do it right, make it really nice. And just about the time last, a year, more than a year ago, winter, the opportunity for this potential other grant came up. So we decided to maybe hold off on our project of installing all the sound light here in case this grant came through. We might do additional things like insulation, curtain, and things like that, which would affect the install of sound lights.
It's referring to the Burger grant.
Yeah. And so we kind of hung on, we gambled a little bit, we said, let's hold off on our project to see if this comes through, and I make the project better. And we did not get that grant, so by the time we learned that we did not get that grant, we were set back. So over the course of last winter, we actually purchased all the equipment, it is now on site, in the building. We hired an electrician, Dan Cowan, who's been over there over the past, well, a couple weeks ago.
finished installing all of the power requirements. We needed a power upgrade to handle all this equipment. So he's been upstairs putting, not only upgrading the power, but also installing outlets in the ceilings for the lights, so that there won't be like cords all over the place. So now it's gonna be nice and clean. There's outlets in the ceiling. And back in the room is the breaker box. So the next step, which is really the first step, is I've got some contractors lined up for August, the week of August 11th, I think. And a crew of volunteers who are willing to help to actually get all that equipment installed. And it's nice equipment, it's good stuff, it's gonna be professional. So hopefully by late-ish August, that stuff is set up, ready to go. Like they said, we're gonna do an opening show. Just has a play lined up for when?
August, October 2nd,
Well, so that's gonna be like the first Rio production with all of the Rio gear and sound and lights. And I feel like just with the interest that we're seeing with people asking what's going on and what's gonna, I feel like once this is ready to go and shown off how good it's gonna be, that they will produce. And we'll also, get you know, the source of supporting itself financially. So we're there, and it's been, you know, frustrating, it's been slow, but we're right at the final dash to the finish line. So we're excited about that.
Thanks, Dave.
Any questions before I go on?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the second part of our conversations, at our planning session was talking about long-term goals. And, as I mentioned, we realized we need to bring some more towns on board because we have even bigger plans for the future. The big one is getting that space converted upstairs, so it's a year-round space. That's really our big lift, that's what our hopes and dreams are. That's one of the things that kind of kept us in waiting mode on installing the sound light gear, as already mentioned. We had a couple of opportunities where we thought that could happen. Once we realized that that wasn't really in the offing, we needed to see activity going on up there. And that was some of the feedback we got on a couple of these grants that we pursued, that if we had more of a track record, doing things in the hall and utilizing the space that really spoke loudly, or more loudly, I should say, in terms of the grant applications. So that's our big one, but also we want to, in the interim, be able to put some nice seating up there, so when you can come to these events, they can be comfortable and so you enjoy it. Even folding chairs are great, we utilize them a lot, but we think that we can do an improvement there. We're envisioning some premium seating. It's comfortable, but also foldable, portable, so it can be pulled aside should there be a different type of event held upstairs at the wedding or something where maybe they need more space on the floor. So nothing permanent. The other big long-term goal is something of a branding effort. Ultimately, we would envision being able to hold a series of, I guess you could call it a signature series, David, arts and cultural type events. Maybe something every spring, every summer, so it's like a clockwork thing that people know this is a regular thing that's happening all the time in the hall. Maybe you can speak a little bit more about this.
We've talked about checking in with other venues that are in Calais already. The Maple Quarter Community Center, the Gold Coast Church, these are all in the immediate neighborhood. And I think one of the things the town hall, once it's truly rolling as a venue that has the proper equipment and everything else going for it. Then in order to begin to market it and develop a real audience, we need to know how it fits in the bigger scheme of venues that are already operating and what their goals are. So I think we need to carefully have a conversation with all of those neighboring venues and figure out how this one fits and what it ought to be doing that they themselves are not doing. I think this is the thing that Calais in general needs to be very cautious of, because we have a very vibrant community with quite a lot of venues, if you include Unadilla, you know, all kinds of other places that are programming. I think we owe it to the community to understand where the need is and then design a series that would take that into consideration. But we certainly want to see regular concerts, lectures, poetry readings, plays, going on up there on a regular basis, but we also need to be realistic about how we compete and how we sell so that it's a success. And those are tricky things that are best done in collaboration with everybody else who is also trying to do the very same thing.
Yeah, and I think to David's point, so these shows that we're talking about would be something that the Friends would be putting on, like we would be sponsoring them. And whether it's monthly or a few times during the summer, whatever the series is, you know, we feel like Friends group along with the hospital, all of it. Like, you know, we're gonna be putting on these sets, like, you know, Chris has a show lined up for the fall, Nancy's got one lined up for the spring, so we're gonna be, other than just renting it and having people come in and renting, we hope to be active and putting stuff out as well.
How? Forgive me if this is captured somewhere, in the documentation that I should be more familiar with, but, how does someone become a board member for the Friends of the Town? It's kind of unique in that it's its own independent 501c3 organization. So like you're managing a town-owned parcel, which is different from any of the other resources in town because they're all privately owned by their individual entities and their governance structure. So what I think we're working toward navigating now is that we're getting closer to this point where we have this real community asset. There's going to be a certain obligation, I think, from, you know, the perspective of the select board to make sure that that is like accessible, I think, to the public to a certain extent, and maybe even more so than some of the other facilities. And having a conversation about how we're navigating that. You know, I don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about like, we need to be making money from this thing, as a community, but it's I certainly feel like it's an underutilized asset. And maybe part of that's recognition and part of it's wanting to make sure that we're not opening it up prematurely, and taking one step forward to take two steps back. And then also there's going to be some pretty significant infrastructure that's pretty expensive. And we want to be mindful about how, you know, access to that is managed. So I think we're kind of chipping away towards like wanting to have like a more comprehensive look about like how the interplay of access as a community resource versus, you know, what the Friends are focused on running and bringing to fruition, and like how do we get there in parallel so that we're not keeping something, you know, restricting the access to something that is a great community asset, and collaborating where there's opportunity to collaborate. You know, we may have line of sight on other grant opportunities, because it is a community owned asset, for those energy things. And, you know, while we'd love to task any outside group with doing the legwork and applying for those grants and managing them, like if we need to spin up resources to help fine tune, you know, a really compelling argument so that we can realize some of those grants, we don't want to miss the opportunity to do that. really spitballing here, to the extent, like, back to the governance structure, like. I don't know, it seems like having a better conduit between the board and the town, one way or the other, so that. We're not losing sight of those, and we're closing the feedback loop between the management entity and the ownership entity, I think would help a lot and go a long way. If that's something that.
Lots of parts there, but let me try and address them one at a time. You first asked about how does someone become a member of Board of Friends? That's the annual meeting.
Yeah.
Which will happen in October. Anyone, you don't have a limit as to how many people can sit on the board. And we don't even necessarily require that you belong to the community of Calais, although we hope that you do, because that would be more of a vested interest. Nominations are open. Anyone can nominate. You don't have to be on the board to nominate someone to be on the board. To just become a member of the Friends, email us and say, I'd like to be a member of the Friends, and you're in. Attend one of our events and use our sign-up sheet, and you're in. Well, pretty easy going as far as that is concerned. I don't know if this board is aware of the evolution of how all of this came about. But many of the members currently on the board of the Friends were on the original town hall committee that was created by the previous select board to oversee bringing this building to where it is now. Once we completed that phase of the project, the Friends came into existence as the idea of a way to promote third-party use of the hall, non-municipal use of the hall. And encourage art and cultural and any number of other community based activities. It's a hall for all of us. There was some juggling. I'm trying to figure out how we work this because of these factors that you mentioned, Jordan. It's not like anything else because these groups own their buildings and they do this, but this one's owned by the town and we're an independent body. We're not a committee assigned. So we came up with the idea of basically a three-part idea. The first is the town hall usage policy. That's controlled by the select board. And that document determines what can and can't happen at the hall. If you all decide to sit down one day, we gotta amend this document. There's no dances at the hall. Okay, well, Friends, we can't schedule dances at the hall anymore. Just going that out as a broad example. But that is the select board's tool for really making sure they have a handle on what can happen at the hall and what can't happen at the hall. The second one is the management agreement, which is the concert between the select board and the Friends of the town hall. And we encourage exactly this kind of dialogue so that we make sure that we're fulfilling your expectations and we have a chance to make you aware of any concerns that we might have. I don't know, wild examples don't come to mind, but I can think of something from the past, but early on, after the hall had been gone through its renovation and we were all starting to enjoy it. This was unfortunately right around the time COVID hit, so it kind of put a kink in our plans to have a grand opening celebration. But one of our board members one day was here and noticed that there was an issue with the water quality. That ended up being discussed. The Friends went forward and solicited RFQ to solicit quotes for someone to put in a water filtration system. Working with the select board at that point in time, that ended up happening. A few different quotes came forward. We presented to the board made a decision, awarded, and it happened. That probably saved the town hundreds of thousands of dollars because with the high mineral content of the water that's in this building, all of the plumbing, all of the heating lines would have deteriorated over a rapid period of time. So it's those kind of things where we see opportunities to really have that dialogue and have a positive effect on both sides of the table. In terms of being able to check and going on, not just this once a year thing, and we come together to talk about the agreement on that. Sometime back, we approached the board and said, we'd like to have access to car rates so that we have something going on that we need to bring the board in on, we can ping Kari and say, hey, we got this going on, I'm already in contact, and say, hey, we're getting ready to do this work upstairs, so that you could then alert the select board. Select board would have an opportunity to come back to us and say, oh, wait a minute, what do you got going on there? We need to know a little bit more about this before we pull the trigger. And we're hoping that that kind of dialogue continue as well. But we're also open to suggestions if you wanted more regular check-in, if you wanted to do a biannual thing or a quarterly thing. We're certainly here, we're available. And as I mentioned early on, we're looking for additional talent to come on board. So any inputs and suggestions we get, we welcome.
Great.
I mean, it's a friends organization.
Yeah.
Right? Friends organizations exist all across Vermont. They are public spirited friends of the, whatever the public facility may be. The State House has a friends group. Local libraries have friends groups. So we are here to assist. We are not here to necessarily run the facility itself.
Yeah.
In this case, we can't afford a staff.
Right.
So we're providing the management, again, as the Friends organization that is assisting you in making this a lively place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we're sort of like the buffer between you and the public, like, once this thing gets rolling, you don't want to be meeting with people every week about the next event that's coming up and talking to the band that wants to rent us. So we're kind of like filtering that through our management agreement, through our rental agreement to you guys, right? So we're handling that stuff. But we're in concert with you for the rules, right? So ultimately you want to say, okay,
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, so.
And thank you for mentioning.
Well,
already, that's the third part of the.
Yeah.
Fabric that I was referencing. Which is something that's gonna be under review, in the very near future, because with the advent of all this equipment that we're installing. We realize we're gonna need to readdress our rate structure. We're looking at probably putting in a tiered type approach where depending on how much of the facility somebody wants to use. It's a model that's being employed by the Performing Arts Hub in Montpelier, where, and you know what you need from the space, you determine what rate level you're gonna come in at.
But still accessible,
Exactly.
especially at Calais residents.
Exactly. So Jordan, did I
Yeah.
address that to your satisfaction?
Yeah.
That was a lot, so.
No, I mean, I posed the most unfair questions because they go all over the place. So thank you. I think that checked a lot of the boxes and I'm, when's the next kind of collective meeting for you guys?
Our general, we have a set date, the third Wednesday of each month to meet, but it's always ad hoc. Right now, we anticipate probably meeting, I don't have the exact date in front of me, but next month, because we've got so much going on, we need to check in more often. And sometimes we just, hey, we need to get together and talk about this real quick, and so we'll call it ad hoc. But if you need to be aware of when that meeting specifically is gonna happen, in case you want to attend or sit in on Zoom or whatever, we've been doing a lot of meetings by Zoom, we're getting back into the habit of meeting in person. But sometimes we see there's other people using the hall that evening, so we might default to Zoom and acquiesce the space for the other group.
I think, what I had in mind is like if there were a particular select board that might be, feel like they're dialed into this particular topic and conversation, and whenever the conversation about just kind of doing a review or check-in of the usage rental agreement and like policy documents, as you guys are having a conversation about what that structure looks like and how management of access is gonna look, it'd be, I think, most efficient to plug somebody into that, and just so that when there's a recommendation for or if there is a recommendation for a change, that's not being done in kind of a silo and then there's unexpected feedback that kind of derails progress. So we can kind of like get ahead of any of that conversation.
What I would offer there and suggest is that, much as the select board does, we generally will identify an agenda a few days in advance of the meeting.
Sure.
I would just get in the habit of when I'm sending the agenda out to the members of the board, I could CC the admin address.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Then you'll have a chance to review it, and you need to jump in, you're welcome to join us.
I think that's a great start. That'd be awesome. I think it could go to either Barbara or Kari or both, you know, because both are pretty integral in forming the agenda and circulating things as they come up. And if there's a select board member in an interim period that wants to like step in, then at least it doesn't have to necessarily take place during a select board meeting, that somebody could just raise their hand and participate.
Maybe, one of us could come every 2 months or something and give a breakdown to you and,
I think that's a good idea. I think that's probably more than would be necessary, you know, for sure. I think the conversation's already started, a really helpful dialogue and perspective on where things are at.
I feel strong about, you know, we created this rental agreement, we had the agreement with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, this is a money for like, you know, things are gonna come up, right? So this is new
definitely.
for us, it's new for the building, it's new for everything. So, you know, we also know that, you know, there may be a piece of our rental agreement that just doesn't work. Like, you may find out at some show, like, this doesn't work, and we're more than willing to work. Just have, you know, it's gonna take a while for things to smooth out, find the rules.
Yeah. It sounded like you do a little bit. Have you thought through sort of as you move through the next phase? How to sort of draw in more? I feel like I've heard from people that they don't know it's available to rent, or they don't know how to rent it. And looking at the spreadsheet you sent, it's, you know, only gets used a few times a year for
I personally feel like it's gonna steam up, like, well, there's already been like, you know, a few people who kind of know, that know us, we talked about it, and you know,
You're worried about too much?
this is just speculation,
Yeah.
but I feel like by summer or whatever, it's gonna be the opposite. Yeah,
Question you put before is how do we slow this down? To speak specifically though, Jamie, yeah, we haven't been aggressively marketing it as already mentioned. Right, we pretty much rely right now on the page on the town website using Front Porch Forum. We do have a Facebook page, although it's a little blunt tape.
Yeah.
And YouTube has also been a very effective resource for us. We've actually gotten contacted and inquiries about the hall from people in Williamston and Williston, Burlington, because of our promotions on YouTube. So word of mouth, of course, is a big thing. Also, we do an annual report for the town report that hopefully alerts the community and those who actually take the time to read the town report to be aware of it. But going forward, yes, we are going to be looking strongly at what other opportunities we have for marketing the hall. Probably the development of our own website. There is actually a clause in the management agreement where the town agrees to provide, I believe it's $500 a year, specifically for the promotion of the hall as a venue. We haven't come to you asking for that because we haven't been aggressively pushing the hall. But at some point, we will turn on that switch and say, okay, let's go ahead and make that happen. And we imagine that will primarily be towards the care and feeding of the website, as well as hard copy promotional materials.
we've just been afraid to go there because we're not ready yet, so, but now that we're more solid on a date, we're gonna have a completion and things are gonna try. We just didn't, we don't want to put it out there, hey, come around to town hall, well, we don't know when the equipment's gonna be selling, well, now we're getting that thing.
And it'll be available equally for events that don't necessarily need equipment, like if somebody wants to have a birthday
Oh, yeah.
party.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
The process right now is the request comes in typically through the friend's email. I go back to whoever submitted an inquiry, try to get a little idea, like how large an event is this, how many people will be attending, will you be serving alcohol? How long do you think the event is gonna go for? Do you need a day in advance to clean up or day after, day in advance to prep, day after to clean up, these kind of questions. I did bring that to the board as a whole, we review it, make sure it's something we're comfortable with, we think we can handle. Also verify up front that there isn't a conflict with anything that's already on the town calendar. Or other activities that are being planned. Sometimes we hit some speed bumps there because we have something that's in the works and it's not in stone. So we kind of have to juggle a little bit before we can go back and say, okay, we think we can make this work. Let us know if you'd like to join in and we'll make it happen for you.
And it seems like there's a number of things, and this may be for a conversation later.
Yeah, I guess,
wanna
I think we're,
probably not
we're really behind schedule here. And I think this is really good dialogue. What I'd rather do, it's, you know, it's needed, but like, I'd like to lean on maybe finding somebody, from the select board to maybe, attend the next meeting and kind of keep working through some of that. And so we can kind of move on here, but I appreciate everybody coming, and starting the conversation.
Including Scott
And,
participating by long distance. Thank you, Scott.
yes, Juanita, did you have a question or comment?
Yes. I want to hold a birthday party here. And I've been asking since April, and I finally got an answer last week. That's not the only issue. We have to have a site manager here. I need a babysitter. And I have to pay that person $25 an hour. I've lived in this town 35 years.
Anita, this was actually a topic of discussion at the last meeting of friends.
Good.
And that's why I contacted you to say, hey, I'm gonna bring this up at the next meeting. I didn't hear anything back from you. I understand your frustration, but we need to be able to have this dialogue. The friends agreed that we could have a birthday party there and you could waive all of the administrative and sign it. Yes, I did. They said you do that.
No, it's not.
I can pull the email up and show it to you.
Okay.
We don't have to have a conversation.
I'm just
I want to work with you to
expressing
make it
my
happen.
happiness
I
with
hear
this whole
your
process.
frustration and we're working on making it better. And I would like to work with you personally, to make sure that this happens to your satisfaction.
And, well, I also want to point out that I could not anywhere online find who was on this committee. I finally found it in the town.
Yes, well, and
So what you were saying about, I forget exactly, I said that being more public and letting people know.
I agree, we can do better, and we're looking to do just that. And, you know, I think you should bring in concerns to us, and I'm very sincere, I'll say, I'm gonna work with you, maybe look.
And, the price is not unreasonable, it's very reasonable, I don't have an issue with that at all. I just been extremely frustrated with this because I felt like I was actively being discouraged.
That was the main issue.
I'm sure it wasn't, I don't doubt that, that's just the feeling I've got from my end.
And thank you for pointing that out.
So can we, if there was emails that were sent that maybe were missed, should we start this conversation?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
exactly what I was gonna
Just
say.
let me-
Let me know when
bring this
you're
up.
available, I'll call you, or we can meet in person, just tell me your preference.
Um.
thank you, Juanita. I mean, I think that's a genuine concern. It's a piece of feedback that is shared. And, you know, I think it is, as we've touched on before, because of the unique relationship between the Friends and it being a community-owned asset, like there's a higher bar for not letting the good get in the way or being sacrificed for the perfect. And so that's kind of what we're at.
Hours, right, and.
I appreciate what you're doing, but you need to consider down here too.
Right.
And just regular townspeople, please.
I think we're trying to make it really accessible to townspeople based on like the rates that we're charging and stuff like that, so. And I feel like in our collective minds, we've just been like, let's just get the thing open, right? And like, so people who are actively to us now, we're just like, okay, we're almost there, but you know. So if that conversation didn't go right, it was spoken about it last meeting, right? So Yeah, so we just need to get better at like, okay, now we're really thinking about opening a place, let's have more. You know, Facebook website, how to contact us, stuff, so.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it. It's warm. It's been long dialogue. We're gonna move on very unceremoniously to the next bit of things, but thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Artie. Thanks, Chris.
Here.
I'm looking at the schedule. I'm wondering if we could entertain, well, before the striking some things. Oh, that might be Nancy's. Oh, no.
Oh, here's your pen.
What'd you have in mind? You postpone the public works mutual aid agreement.
Yeah,
Stephen's not here for a report.
and were we gonna touch on anything in particular for the long-term financial planning? I don't. Okay. Okay, well, I just want to try to get a little bit of consensus. So, the next item up is just public comment, which. Yeah, we generally open up to anything that's not on the agenda. You have the whole 15 minutes technically, but I beg you, please don't use 15 minutes. Yeah, or is there any other public comment for anything that's not on the agenda?
Oh, yeah, I'm Dave Hawkins, I live on East Hill, and I have a feel that I could get into for years with the crime machinery and whatever else. And then we did the big ditch. And now I can't get in.
I would echo
Talked
you.
to John and Dr. Carey, and there's no resolution put on here to see. All I wanna do is to get in my field.
So there's no, if I recall, there's not a official curb cut where he had a entrance into his field.
I would also say that TH-34 is now inaccessible because of the ditch was put in. There's no culvert to get to TH-34 as well.
And I mean, I've never had a curb, it's just gone in and now for my whole lifetime.
Yeah.
And now I can, so I don't see why I need a curb cut, because I was getting in one day, the next day we got the over ditch. And now I can't get in.
And that's a conversation that came up in the ordinance advisory committee, because I think farm entrances are exempt from needing a curb cut under the current ordinance. Of course, we need to know about them if we're not gonna block them in ditches, I guess.
Well, it seems like a reasonable request to kind of restore access, since it's a use that is covered under state statute, and wouldn't necessarily require a curb cut. But I think what we should probably do is just put it on the next meeting agenda to take a look at it and look at like what specifically the town can do to restore the 2 points of access that were historically there. And then have some dialogue around how those situations get addressed.
What's the second one?
That Bill just
So
mentioned.
TH-34 goes between Jack Hill and North Calais Road. I'm curious, David, if we put a culvert in there, could you get access to your field from there? Or would you could?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and road gravel.
So maybe a way to streamline that would be to have the town apply for, or makes a specific designation for that, and whether or not we call it a curb cut or not, it is a shared access for restoring access to the field for agricultural usage and for TH-34. But we'll work on just taking a look at what that would look like and what the most efficient way to restoring access is, and then. And make sure that we have like a process or procedure for communicating with landowners when there's gonna be ditch work like that, that could potentially disrupt agricultural access, or property access in that way. So thank you for raising the issue.
Next time, we'll bring it up.
Yeah, our next meeting is gonna be in two weeks. And so we'll put it back on the agenda to take a finer look at it and have a very specific plan for restoring access. Does something need to happen sooner than that?
Well, John's coming, but hey, at some point.
Yeah.
As I actually came last month, but I went to town
office.
I didn't come here, so late, I stayed there like 6:30, but this is fine. But it was here.
Oh, darn it.
And tonight I went there and the light bulb went off and, let's go here and all these cars. So, yeah, that's, it's my fault. For not getting here earlier, I've done a lot of winter.
No, that's fine.
It's not your fault, no.
Well, we certainly bear some responsibility there, and at least taking into consideration points of access that are in established.
For, further, nobody talks to the landowner, and I know that the town has the right of way to do it, but it just, I told John, I said, well, you could have knocked on my door and said, you're gonna do this, and we could have a conversation.
Yeah.
But I come home and you go to the store and the store will say, it's not moving.
Yeah.
And so there's no conversation. Just for the back thing.
Yeah. Look, very fair point, I think timely, because we're having the same discussion on the ordinance advisory committee and looking at curb cuts and road access policies and that sort of thing, so it's a great time to.
I hadn't used it.
Yeah.
I would go there, too.
Right.
As long as I already had it.
Right.
And it was taken away.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could do it, I just don't want to. A lot of money.
Yeah.
Not a lot of money, but a lot of money.
Enough. Yeah.
Yeah, just want what I have, that's all.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for bringing the issue up, and we'll have some more conversations between now and in the next
So the
meeting.
next meeting will be when?
Well, at the latest, the next meeting is gonna be August 4th, nope,
11th.
August 11th, but I think that there's probably an opportunity to have some dialogue between, this week and next week, and see if there isn't some sort of resolution. We'll be in touch with you as soon as we can. Yeah. To get that addressed. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, this is my first ever select board meeting.
August.
Been down 80 years. Okay.
Well, don't let it be the last one.
Yeah, interesting, I never. Do that.
We're always looking for select board members.
Yeah.
I'm not younger, but. I don't have any social talk. On any job, for sure. I'm sure not have to knock on the door and jump on the board. My temperament probably wouldn't work good here. I'll always come. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to come in. Yeah,
I'll be brief. I agree with you. I want to second that this was a very nice meeting to attend.
And what's your name?
Oh, Mary Alice Crockett, Capitol Road. It's just so nice. I know it's the off season and people are at the pond and, camping, but it's so nice to sneak in here at the quiet time of year and just see how well Selectboard is doing and our town manager. And I think it's worth saying out loud, because I know it sounds like we're gonna have some really hard conversations this year. So not every meeting might be super easy, but I just wanna say, you know, for my 2 cents for what it's worth, I'm really grateful for all the work that you're all doing, and also just what a great job you're doing running this meeting. It felt really professional, really great. And I did wanna jump in and just say, because I heard a overlapping theme in some of the conversations earlier around programming and the need to bring in, you know, potentially more finances for the town. In 2020, when Renee Gronkowski and Jerry Stoner and I really got going with Friends of Calais and trying to transition what was the PTO to more of an intergenerational, you know, town-wide organization, we were very much thinking about how we utilize our spaces, our third places, right, is what we call them. In a way that helps promote like civic dialogue and relationship building, and also maybe bringing back some old traditions. I've not been involved. I know Barbara and Anna Mathis and others are now involved, Stephen. But there was a survey that was done, and I know they put a lot of effort into surveying the community about how the buildings are being used and what people want to see. And so if that's not on the top of your list right now, I just would really recommend touching base with Anna Matheson, Stephen, Barbara, others to pull that data up to look at it. Because people in Calais have already responded on that survey. And it might be really useful in helping, you know, some of the conversations, but not just Friends of Town Hall, but with other groups. Think collectively about how can we program bringing in financial resources that we need to help ease the restraints ahead, while also protecting the character of the town. And what I would say is that you can do both, right? You just have to have a vision for what it looks like. And I'll just leave it at that. I just wanted to just jump in and throw that out there. And again, thank you so much for your great work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, we'll close the public comment and move on to the administrative items. Does anybody need a break? Want to push forward? You want to cry? Does anybody?
Talk fast,
Stand up.
talk faster.
I'm trying. I'm trying to talk as fast as I can. Dyslexia plus this talking fast. Nobody's gonna understand me. All right, well, moving on to the administrative items. So we have the approval of the minutes from the July 14th select board meeting. Has everybody had the opportunity to read those? I had some mostly stylistic input that at this point I don't feel as passionate about.
First thing you read in there.
Actually, one of them was, I think, a little bit more substantive. It was in the Moscow Woods Bridge area, one of the specific feedbacks for further investigation and action was reviewing whether or not we need to consider a weight restriction on there. And I think that one would just be a good one to flag, I think, for kind of community awareness and then also as a kind of continuing follow-up. And then the listers conversation, there was reference to homeowners, which I think is in part just a grammatical error. Tegan had mentioned that there would be someone specifically from NEMRIC going around and providing notice. And that wasn't necessarily, I got the impression that notice was, the way it was framed, that it was gonna be coming from the listers, and it doesn't sound like it is. That's gonna be from NEMRIC specifically about the assessment process. So I just thought that was an important kind of differentiation. And that process was beginning. So I think it's important to note that it's NEMRIC who's gonna be carrying out those And then. Yeah, I'll leave the other one. Another one was that, the, Craig Line maintenance vote is listed as 5-0, and I think
So what was
the roadside maintenance agreement for Craig Line. That I think would be most accurate to be listed as a 4-0 and 1 abstention.
Okay.
And then, does anybody else have anything else? Is anybody comfortable with those notes?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to accept those with the,
Real quick, cause you had mentioned wanting to separate, was what I did for I separated the select board members.
That looks great.
For attendance, is that better?
That looks great, very helpful, yeah.
Christie wanted you to know she really.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wanted to make sure that that was an acceptable option.
I think it's helpful.
I thought it was awesome. It was the first thing that I noticed, but kudos is the first thing I cut when I feel like press for town. Yeah. No, thank you. That's a great adjustment. I appreciate that.
The last thing I would say is the Conservation Commission, which says Conservation Commission continued. I think it's not spelled right, that's all.
Conservation Commission, I'm sorry, continue.
Conservation, at least on my thing, is not spelled right.
Try.
Yeah. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as noted for edits, with edits? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Vote to approve board orders that were posted to the shared drive. Hopefully everybody's had the opportunity to review. Are there any specific questions that anybody wants to address? Questions or comments from Kari? Can I get a motion to approve the board orders and have them signed?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approve the Nemke private maintenance and public road access. This was the one that was tabled from the last meeting, to take the opportunity to try to seek input from the 2 other property owners that would potentially be affected by that. Was there, I think the only outstanding one was Opasinski.
Yeah, we heard from Walter.
And he's comfortable with the agreement.
There's some support.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions or concerns about that particular one? Can I get a motion to accept or approve the private maintenance agreement as prepared and presented to the select board? So moved.
Second.
On there? Aye. Thank you. And I'm sorry, approve and sign the vicious dog rules and procedures. So this was again prepared as a way to help kind of streamline and standardize the way that we conduct the proceedings. Has everybody had the opportunity to review those?
Yes, I like
The big change was that there was the phrase domestic pet over and over again. And
Yeah.
That's been.
Thank you. That should make it even more concise. Can I get a motion to accept the rules and procedures for the vicious dog proceedings?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And approve and sign the fund balance policy. So again, this was a policy that Ari was doing a bunch of homework on, and is been discussed a number of times. Does anybody have any outstanding questions about the policy? Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve, sign and adopt the fund balance policy that has been prepared?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And sign and update the dog ordinance previously adopted. So we've gone through the seasoning period now with that, and this is this.
It's just ready to be signed.
Oh, we just need to.
You adopted it last time.
Gotcha.
Now it has the date.
It just wasn't ready.
And Keegan has begun posting.
Yeah.
She did the public notice.
Okay.
So we're in that comment period or whatever, petition, so.
Is there any reason to wait to sign it until after the comment period in case there's some sort of change that needs to be made so that we're not signing something that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Go ahead. on this.
Sure. Sign, so can I get a motion to, sign the previously adopted, dog ordinance as was
Do we need
recommended?
a motion?
No,
Probably not.
Yeah.
We're just gonna sign
post item.
Identify attendees for, the August 14th, East Montpelier Fire Department meeting, so this is more of, just kind of a housekeeping, coordination thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll be there.
Barry will be there. It's not necessarily a joint meeting. The last couple of them, and there are pilot select board meetings had to be warned as joint meetings, but I guess this one wouldn't necessarily have to be.
There's not gonna be a quorum, I don't think.
No.
I mean, you just warn it. Yeah, it's,
With my other commitments, I'm gonna have a hard time attending it in person. Does anybody else feel particularly compelled to?
Do we
Attend.
need, this is my question, is do we
you
need,
you asked this last time. And I don't think you need to be at this one.
when we're needed, I really would like to be notified so
Yeah,
we can.
you will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm looking.
And that, what that looks like is they'll come to a meeting in, say, November or December with their budget request. That'll be very important. And then I think early January, we usually all meet. We say, okay,
Okay.
now let's really talk about this budget.
Okay,
And
great.
what the select board can support.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
wanna be responsive.
Well, then we'll move on to the financial report. So we have the fiscal year end report, prepared by
Yeah.
Kari as
Yeah.
treasurer. Has everybody had the opportunity to take a look at that?
So from my perspective, pretty pleased the way things turned out. We had, if you combine the highway and the general government, revenues were 108% of budget. You know, the additional grants, mainly on the highway side. And then we still had 21, almost 22,000 in delinquent taxes owed for the year, which we can assume we're gonna recoup most of that eventually. Total.
We can assume that we will include it.
Yeah, we will,
Okay.
we will bring that in eventually. Total general government expenditures were at 92% of budget. And that didn't include, it ended up being a $3,007 transfer to cover the highway department's deficit for the year. So that's net of that. Highway department expenditures, we were 115% of budget. So remember, we were tracking that over the course of the year, we knew we were high, but we were only that $3,007 below revenues. So, bottom line, we brought in quite a bit of additional revenue through grants. It was about $118,000. So, Toby gets a lot of credit for lining those up. You approved them, we did the matches where that was appropriate and the team was able to execute it. So that was a good effort. And then you've combined the two, we had 130,000 more in revenue than expenditures. So from my perspective, that's a good year. And that's separate from FEMA and other funds. These are just the two, the general government and the highway. So fund balance at the end of the year, was, this is unaudited, I'm sure there'll be some adjustments, but general government, we were at $465,000 and highway department was 0. Which is where it should be.
And how does that 465 compare to the previous year?
Well,
We don't know.
it was almost nothing last year, but
Uh-huh.
we were still, we're still waiting on a certain amount of reimbursement.
Right,
I guess I'd have to look back at, I have ongoing document that'll show fund balances, but in my sense, it's good. And relative to the policy you just adopted, if this number holds, the select board might be thinking about how it invests the overage, because I think you calculated the overage at about 410.
Yeah.
So.
I think.
And by rights, you would spend most of that on the county road repaving project that you committed to.
Yeah.
We didn't budget for.
right.
But that's a sort of a good illustration of how that might go.
I think, it's hard to know like how, what that means in a point in time, relative to the rest of the context. So, you know, those in this room have the last like 2.5 to 3 years worth of context. And maybe those who are paying really close attention to all of this stuff have a broader range, but I anecdotally have heard that we've gone from deficits to, I've been told not to call them surpluses, but reserve funds essentially. And I think this is kind of a point that I was thinking about when I was reviewing the tax information. But if we can figure out a way to maybe identify like what the key performance metrics are that we want to track year over year, it would be really helpful to have like a spreadsheet that shows like, this is how much is this way, or this is how much it was this year, so that when we have instances of like the flooding where it was just like, well, we completely wiped that out, plus we had to take out a loan to just be a safeguard in case we didn't get the funding that we wanted, and then all of that was reimbursed through the FEMA reimbursements. So we didn't take the hit that we thought we were going to hit, and great, but to give other select boards an idea of like when's a safe time to start pulling from that and get a better barometer of like what the ebb and flow of that fund balance is.
I have a document that shows not only the fund balance, but the property tax rates. Over the years, so that would be a good one to look at next time.
I think so. That would be great. Otherwise, you know, I think this is a testament to the budgeting process that we've established over the last couple of years and making sure that we're accurately and conservatively, you know, proposing budgets that reflect the expenses of the town.
Well, and hard work by grant seekers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really made a big
Advantage,
difference.
that's
It's huge.
really important. Maybe. Even the past.
I think incorporating that in a concise way into like the town report would maybe be. I mean, as we start to get into other years of harder decisions, and the realities of how the state might be changing its funding structure and how much of the tax base may need to be redirected into road maintenance, for instance, regular road maintenance, to make up for the grants that aren't coming through anymore. Anyway, for more discussion later. Anything else on the financial report? Any other concerns, questions, comments?
Great.
Thank you, Kari. It's very helpful. Property tax rate discussion. So we've got the documents that were prepared by Kari as treasurer for reviewing and establishing the tax rates. Was everybody able to find those? Actually, I guess it's just the one. It's just the one. It's the spreadsheet.
I'm prepared to go through this in a little bit of detail if you'd like that. I put quite a bit of effort into laying this out, you know, in a little more detail this year.
Yeah, I found the layout really pretty intuitive, as intuitive as I think that this topic can be, relative to all of the different items that are inputs from them. I don't feel strongly about going through it in.
You don't need the
acute
full.
detail.
Well, I'll
Unless anybody
point
else.
out this tab. I think this is worth, you know, like if you really want to understand the overview, this is good to understand this, I think at the select board level. So obviously there's the homestead and the non-homestead rates are for different things. It's a little counterintuitive, but the non-homestead rate is actually lower than the homestead rate. Although homesteads are eligible for income sensitive tax adjustments. So that, you know, so there's that. And then keep in mind that the part of the new legislation, education legislation, is creating at least one more category, which will be non-homestead second home, as opposed to non-homestead business. And there may be other categories coming in the future. Of course, there are two components. There's the town rate, you know, you're going to approve tonight, and then the state education rate, and the town maintains around 30% of the overall. So it's good to know. The basic formula is the tax rate is the expenses divided by the grand list value. The expenses are the voter approved budget, you know, including net of income, so of other income. So that we don't have a lot of discretion in that, and we don't have discretion in the grand list value. Just keep in mind that what grand list, for the purposes of tax rate, is the total value, divided by 100. So the number that we're gonna be looking at is 100th of the actual total assessed value. And then there are two exemptions, and exemptions are reductions to the value, the property tax value. And those have been approved by the voters, but we have to make up our portion of the state ed, or the state ed portion, because we as a town adopted that policy. So there's two tabs, one for the veterans exemption. The state contributes $10,000 reduction, but the town back in 2007 voted to add the maximum additional amount, which is 30,000. So it's a total of 40,000, but the state or the town has to figure out how to cover that $30,000 reduction in property value that is provided to this year 11 veterans. Make sense? Well, and we'll look at the number. And then non-contract exemptions, these are 7 properties that the town voted to fully exempt from property taxes for a period of 5 years. And so Adamant Community Club, the Maple Corner Community Center, so on. And then rates for the 2 exemptions are added to the town rate. And then we add that town rate to the state homestead rate and to the non-homestead rate. So that's all of the steps. All right, so, and you can look at the town meeting. I'll just click on the town rate here's that really simple formula of what we need to raise in property taxes divided by the grand list. Again, that's 100th of the total value, and we come up with that rate, rounded up to 0.8896. Okay, and this is just a check here.
I really liked your proof, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sandra Ferber, originally developed this, so she really gets most of the credit. When we go through all the calculation of the veterans exemption, we find that we'll have to adjust that town rate by 0.0033. So it's not a lot, but we're only raising $6,742. And in this area, I detected an error in how we calculated this previously. Previously, we would, and I think Sandra was doing this, I found this in her calculation, but certainly this is what was approved last year. We only did the assessed value. We didn't do the extra step of multiplying that by the homestead rate, or there was actually one non-homestead in this mix too. So we weren't collecting the full amount of the exemption, but it's a relatively small amount. So same process for the 7 non-contract exempted properties. We have to figure out how to, we have to charge an additional amount to cover the non-homestead portion of this value, $588,200. And so we came up with the additional tax rate of 0.0056. This recommendation tab just combines those 3 components into one. So 0.8985 is what I'm recommending. And that's an increase of 3.8% over last year's town rate. However, the good news, this is not usually typical, but the ed rate is quite a bit lower than the town rate. It's not the norm, but we talked about that earlier.
Because of the buy down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So combining those, the homestead rate would be 2.9495, and that's an increase of 2.6% over last year. So their increases, I think the homestead rate is like 2.1%. So at 70% of the total, that brings the product down to about 2.6. And then the non-homestead rate would be 2.8646, and that's a slightly larger increase, 2.7. So that's the quick overview. Questions?
In the backup tab.
Yes. So these are two reports. The top are 2 reports that come out of the grand list work that the listers did over this past year. And then the bottom section is an excerpt from the states publishing the education tax rates.
So I guess I wasn't following what in under the veterans reduction rate, that there was a total value for the parcels of 440,000. And then there's like there's the two categorizations of, I guess, parcels. I wasn't clear on the veterans 10K versus veterans greater than 10K.
Yeah.
And then seeing how only the 330,000 was carried over into the calculation.
Yeah, so it's each veteran is eligible for $40,000 in exemption.
Yeah, okay.
That was the state's 10,000 standard and the town's
And then the
decision
town's decision
to give the
maximize.
30,000 additional.
Gotcha.
So each veteran is 40,000. We have 11 veterans, 440,000. That's the total assessed value of exemption.
Mhm.
And then I multiplied that by the homestead rate for 10 of them and the non-homestead rate for one of them. And that's the amount of tax that needs to be raised to pay the state for the exemption that we adopted as a policy.
Is there an endpoint of that $30,000?
No, I guess that's a one-time vote. I mean, it could be revoted.
I'm just curious, yeah.
Yeah, and so
That's
I
my
wonder,
understanding, it's a one-time, it doesn't have to be renewed.
that is politically a very bad example to bring up about like discretionary decisions and how these things get made, but I think the other part of this that would be helpful, thinking about how confusing this was for me when I started and trying to wrap my head around it, plus all the calculus of the education stuff.
Yeah.
But having like a decision tree of like, here are the classifications of exemptions that are being managed, and maybe identifying like who has ownership of what process for modifying those, and what the select board has for discretionary decisions about setting tax rates. I mean,
Yeah.
these are tax rates that come recommended by the treasurer based on the math of the grand list and the budget. But do we have any discretion about how we might want to change them, like homestead rates, or modify the recommendation? Relative to how much we've been raising and how close we've been to the budget, I don't think there's much need for that conversation, but I think that more transparency around like what we have discretionary decisions.
I would have to
changing.
research to be sure, but my understanding is you could not set the rate higher than is justified by voter approved budget. You could set it lower. And that would be a policy decision to say the town is going to make up that somehow, presumably through fund balance.
Yeah, gotcha. Interesting, all right.
But I have to research and confirm that.
I would say
At the very least, I think it's gonna be a helpful way for people to, I keep thinking about like, the different, decisions that the community votes on to like give tax exemption, status, to certain properties, and what kind of conditions might want to be added on top of those considerations. Because those are gonna be costs that are distributed through the broader community and in aggregate at some point.
Yeah.
They're gonna start catching up with us, because it could undermine revenue.
On the non-approved contract, the number of Calais properties exempted. And where it says 7. To the right of that, you could just list them with a comma.
Oh, okay.
Which ones
Yeah,
they are,
good,
it'd be
good
nice to have the memory
Yeah.
of which ones
Yeah.
we're talking about. This really helped me
That's a good
understand the whole process,
Oh,
thank you
good.
very much.
Yeah.
Good.
No,
This was like, wow.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
felt way more grounded and,
Yeah.
and it seems like the organization of these tabs, like. You have the descriptions that aren't going to change year over year.
Yes.
And so like, if we had the context of every year of like how those changed, I could see that could be
Yeah.
super helpful.
You start to see it's just arithmetic.
It's just math. Just,
We thought it was car magic.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of work. to make it make sense, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So, we have a decision to, adopt the recommendations. Is that, right?
Yeah, it's just the one rate, the recommended 2025 town tax rate is on the recommendation page.
I'd like to, I guess, entertain a motion, to adopt the recommended 2025 town tax rate of, 0.8985 as presented, in the town treasurer's recommendation.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Moving to the long-term financial planning, we left this as an earmark for something, and I'm not remembering what it is.
Well, I had three quick points on it. One is, Woodbury Select Board's meeting tonight, and they promised to get us some times and dates.
Oh, okay,
They're
great,
convening with us.
thank you.
I met with John, Tyler, and Toby this morning to talk about our capital plan. And so that is on the calendar for August 25th to review the capital plan.
Awesome.
And next time, I want to update the grant schedule, so you can see all the grants that we've got going. And then the third thing was, just plant the seed, do we want to consider some? The meetings are always public, but some more of an invitation to the community to come in and talk about the financial picture. That came up early on as an idea. It might be a way to just frame this next budgeting season, like this is the next step in what's gonna be an ongoing process, right? Figuring out how to right-size our budget as it being.
Do you feel like we know enough about what? I feel like there's so many questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to imagine what the agenda is
Right.
for that, that doesn't become an open,
Yeah, what questions are we asking, right?
Yeah.
I think that the resources are getting refined now to the point where we can have, like, I think to Barbara's point, like, that I don't want to open it up without having enough like structure there. And I think like with having capital planning resource that's more refined from the highways department and a list of the grants, like if we can quantify like what those things have been historically, and then say, if we need to face deleting these things, here are the other things that the town also supports through its budget, and where are we gonna make up those differences? And so I think if we bring more quantitative information, or historically quantitative information to that conversation, like that is what's gonna form the conversation, because that's the input that we need really. And it seems like that needs to be probably a dedicated meeting, like a special meeting or something like that, like before, so it's not on a select board meeting. I just don't see how we're gonna be able to parse the select board meetings down to a small enough scale to have like a hearing like that. And probably get that feedback before.
I could see like a public budget meeting that starts with the context like that.
Yeah.
And then maybe even looking at like a first draft of the budget, like.
Right.
Here's what we're talking about this
Yeah.
year based on the information we have so far. And then seeing what, conversation we can have out of that.
I think it's also, I think a variable in there might be some of the things that we can't do, right? Like that we thought we were gonna do and we can't do, the dam, the Moscow, the dam, the culvert here, these things are already put on hold. The magnitude of those two projects is quite impressive, I think. The work that got done, and then not being able to do it, and the fact that there's some urgency to it.
Right.
To both of them.
Yeah.
I'm just flagging that as something to factor into the conversation so that folks understand we're already.
Deferring really
Deferring.
important projects.
Very important maintenance. Not even maintenance issues.
Yeah.
And yet also doing, we are doing the county road. We did figure out a way to do that with a lot of work, right? And so, but just some slicing in of the reality that we're already experiencing that folks might not really have dialed into. Yeah.
Right, that's helpful. I think, I'm gonna think on that some more and, maybe bring that. Oh, coming up will be the budgeting calendar. So maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. 2025 CVRPC Public Works Mutual Aid Agreement. This is just a agreement to kind of recognize that that we need to be able to help our friends and neighbors and to try to add some structure to how that works and creating the conduit for.
Was this new?
Yes, this is new.
This is new.
The Regional Planning Commission was asked to draft something like this.
By us?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I don't know who asked them, but I take it that this formalizes or could formalize what's already going on to various extents. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any agreement between Calais and other towns, but John Stafford believes that they exist, that, just this sort of like handshake. We will help you out if you need it, but this, I think, one of the things about this is it just creates a process where it designates people so that there's points of contact.
Yeah.
And then it just makes it very clear that compensation or reimbursement is expected. That's I think a pretty important part of this. But this is, we just received this 2 weeks ago. It's brand new. I don't think there's an expectation that we would be entering into this right away, but I want to think about questions or concerns. And I don't know how open they are to any kind of feedback at this point. I think this is sort of on the table. For this year, it's a 1-year approval.
It's a 1-year commitment?
Yeah.
It's
And
dated
you can
January
get out
14th.
too, 60
Yeah,
days.
January 14th, 2024, right, like it exists already. Signed on that day. By the Board of Commissioners, January 14th, 2025.
I will admit that I have not had a chance to read this yet.
Yeah, I think that maybe we should be given another opportunity to look at it, but
Absolutely.
I'm unclear on what action we've been asked.
To sign and adopt, I think I'd like to know how many other towns, I guess, at this point have adopted it.
I
Yeah.
don't know that anybody has, I mean, it really just came out.
Yeah, so I guess I would propose tabling this and letting everybody kind of chew on it and maybe doing some outreach to see how some of the other communities feel about it. But I think it's interesting that there's so many communities that are on here that need to sign it, and does that mean that, Berry Town and Calais, are gonna have obligations for mutual aid?
Oh, so just to be clear, the way it's written is it's completely discretionary.
Yeah.
You have like this command, incident commander type, it's very, I see it as like a hierarchical structure, and that person has the authority to say, yes, we'll help, or we won't.
Right.
And there's no expectation that a town has to help. So, yeah, that's a very important part of this.
Well, let's table it for the next meeting. And maybe plan on hopefully a shorter meeting where we can maybe dig into it a little bit more.
You mentioned that you shared it with Toby and John and Tyler.
Yeah, the only feedback I got from John was he felt like we essentially have what this offers by our relationships with the road groups. That was his take. Toby thought that this was all about reimbursement. I'm just being super clear. And insurance, I would add to that, you didn't say that, but I would add that.
Yeah.
Indemnifying. It's just maybe sort of the next step in that kind of relationship. Yeah, so I take it that this is what utilities do, right? This is what.
Right.
Fire departments do all the time, and they're just,
Mutual aid, you know.
yeah. Big part of what they do.
I'll save my comments for later. Move on to reports, if we can. And I don't, is Tegan's not on, I don't think she had anything, that's right, hopefully she's enjoying it. Barbara, was there anything that Tegan had passed along by chance to? No? Great. All right,
Yeah,
additional items.
couple quick ones, just before I came in, Drew Lasik, who's on our road crew. His first year employee gets 1 week of vacation, he'd like to take a vacation or take some time off without being paid, it's unpaid leave. And our policy says the select board has to approve that, so I'll bring you the specifics on that next time, but.
Okay.
I don't think that's gonna be an issue. When we were doing our capital planning meeting this morning, we brought up the topic of a generator for the garage. And that's something that's been on the list as, well before I started. It's not sized properly to open the overhead units. So that has to be done manually at the worst possible time.
Right.
Hours out in the early morning. So I have an older quote for $11,000. We've been trying to find a grant and we haven't found one. And I think we're at the point now where we should think about drawing on the capital equipment fund to pay for this. So I'm gonna bring a proposal. And soon, the French mattress, if you didn't read it, the Belvance is gonna cover it, and they wanna start the week of August 25th. They know that they have to be done by September 8th in advance of the Kent Hill museum.
The
Kent Museum.
art and.
Art. Oh, and then the East Calais Dam removal conversation was really interesting. I mean, but I really thought that meeting last week was well done, and there's another one that Wednesday at 6.
Which was coming.
Yeah. And I thought that Jordan, you were there, but I thought the main concern and this was for the local residents who will be impacted. The main thing they brought up, they wanted to know was who will own and manage the land that's newly exposed by the water level going down. And on Friday, our attorney finally responded. They had to do a bunch of research. They had to go outside their firm to get information, but perspective, because this is sort of an emerging topic, right? They think, the attorneys think that the state will win it. Because it's, the water is a navigable water, state water, so I think the land that's left would be state controlled. But more to happen, you don't think something?
I
Not as expected.
Not what I was expecting.
Not either.
And I don't know that that's going to allay concerns, that's interesting.
Michelle said that was the case at another recent dam removal they did.
Yeah.
It's not always the case. Yeah, all right.
All right. And there's gonna be there's another meeting for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that one was,
Yeah.
that was like a stakeholders kind of
immediate.
initial, like immediate property owners, and then
Well
there's,
attended.
it was well attended by a significant
Yeah.
portion of the impacted immediate adjoining property owners, and then there's another meeting that's more of a public community outreach
Anybody can
meeting,
come.
where they go over similar information. But the Friends of Winooski wanted to try to capture some initial feedback from property owners in that meeting, and I think they got it and heard it. It was
They're
pretty,
familiar with
yeah.
how this process works, that SLR engineers said they've removed 30 dams approximately.
I guess the interesting, well, I don't know, the interesting part of that assessment from our lawyers is that would actually kind of pull the town out of any official participation in that process, with the exception of still wanting to know what the outcome is relative to the bridge project, but anyway.
Yeah, if the bridge is, if the dam is gonna be removed before the bridge, they have to really design how they leave the channel, the stream channel. At least temporarily until we get that bridge replaced. So.
Will that state to part of the bridge project?
The clock is ticking.
Yeah.
All right. Any other items that, no, do you want to cover the select board meeting kind of proposed calendars that were in your memo? I think those are all pretty straightforward. Does anybody have any questions about those? All right. Well, that'll close the reports and, moving on to, appointments. I'd like to mix up the organization here a little bit, and take into consideration the appointments for everybody that was interviewed tonight, and then save the Lister reappointment conversation for last, I guess. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So for the public health officer appointment of Catherine Saunders, does anybody have any other need for conversation there or comments? I think very well qualified, and I really appreciate her perspective that she's already putting into considering a position. Can I entertain a motion to appoint Catherine Saunders as the new town health officer for a 3-year term
Expiring 2028.
expiring in 2028?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And for the appointment of Claudia Welch to the Trails Committee. Does anybody have any need for a conversation around that particular appointment? Can I get a motion to appoint Claudia Welch to the Trails Committee for a term ending, a 3-year term ending
2028.
also in 2028?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. And for the appointment of Emma Marks as the DRB alternate. Are there any other comments or questions? Dialogue.
I have a little concern as to knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, you need to know quite a bit about what's going on with planning documents and everything now, what happens in the DRB. And also some understanding as well about situations. And I don't know what I don't know what the alternates do. If somebody doesn't come to meeting, they have to go and vote. Is that what happens? I'm not against it. I'm just, you know, it's something that involves knowledge that I certainly don't have.
Yeah.
To make a decision like that. And
I think the way it works is if there's an opening, you know, a member can't make it for the quasi judicial hearing that they hold, then the alternate will step in and they will see the process through, because they don't necessarily make a decision that night. There may be another hearing, or maybe a deliberative session at some other point, but anyway, they're assigned to that case, like a jury member from there.
Okay.
And I have no particular knowledge of how this works, but it might be a good training.
That's how I saw it, as more of a training opportunity, especially for the 1-year term
Yeah.
completion that you were suggesting, Jordan. Digging into it to see what it really entails. I thought that maybe was, instead of the multi-year term, that might commit us to something we're not ready for, or that she might get committed to something.
Yeah, okay.
I just wanted to flag, just sorry to interrupt, but as somebody who takes the minutes for the DRB, I just wanted to flag that they come very prepared, like everyone has to review the documents, the regulations, like everything that's pertaining to that particular hearing in advance of the hearing. And they have printouts and their little binders and everything, so they are, because they even said, like, some of the current members are still learning. And they're still getting familiar with processes and things like that, and so they did not move forward until there was a full understanding kind of situation. So just to, if that gives you any peace of mind, like, they are very, very strict about making sure they've read everything pertaining to whatever issue has been raised for the year.
Yeah, I'd like to, I guess, kind of reiterate both. I share Bill's concerns. I'm a little less comfortable with the DRB of like bringing in somebody who doesn't have, very specific experience. But I also want to, looking at all of the other boards and committees and commissions, it doesn't seem like we have openings that are like a better fit. I like really stand by my thought that like she would be a really great addition to the planning commission, and that's what I think, like, maybe working in dialogue with the planning commission in kind of setting up that consideration for 2026, and accepting maybe the risk of that lack of experience for the DRB at least gives Emma the opportunity to get involved, a little bit more immediately.
And also,
with a cohort of individuals who really understand what the roles are, and have really organized around making sure that all the members are informed. And I'll just trust that if she participates in decisions, that it's going to be, impartial.
What the chair is saying.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing that she didn't mention is that she's currently pursuing a master's degree in leadership development, which I think is really great. I guess all the more reason to give her an opportunity to try to find a place
I
to
do
serve.
think, especially just given the state of volunteers in
Yeah.
general, to have someone who's acknowledging where they're at and saying, I'm ready to come in, I agree with you, Bill, there's some concern there, but we just aren't gonna build new talent. Right?
I was just voicing concern, and
Yeah.
I feel better about it already.
Yeah. Okay, well, so with that, I think there's some consensus around appointing Emma Marks to the alternate DRB position with a term ending in 2026.
So it is a 3-year term, but she will be appointed to a term that she will complete.
Yeah.
That term that ends in either 2026 or 2027, your choice.
Yeah. 2026 is the motion I'm proposing.
So moved.
I will second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. So the last appointment is the lister's position to fill the previously appointed position that was held by Rachel, who needed to step down because of some unexpected but happy personal news that was going to, undermine her ability to fully commit to the role, especially with the consideration to the workload that is gonna be necessary around next spring. So we have, from my perspective, 2 other qualified candidates, Toby Talbot and Tim Maker, who both participated in the interview process previously, and who have both expressed continued interest in the appointed position. And we just have to make a decision on which one. I was trying to connect with Tim over the last week, and was kind of feeling a little squishy about doing that on my own. But I had an outstanding question about whether or not my recollection was that he was kind of looking at this appointment as like a trial period to see if he'd be committed to running for reelection, in March. This is just filling out the end of a term that would be re-elected by the voters at town meeting in March. And there's the assumption that, anybody who's coming into it as an incumbent has, a slight advantage, but also there's the concern of the listers that whomever is appointed for the balance of this term is gonna get a fair amount of introduction and training and orientation that will be for not, if they're not committed to running again in March. I think that Tim came around and confirmed that, he would be willing to consider that, but and then there's also Toby, who I don't have a lot of questions about. He's already pretty deeply connected to town comings and goings, and has a pretty deep understanding of the role already, is my understanding. It's an elected position. I would have loved there to be like a wider representation of the community, because it's pretty Maple Corner heavy. But neither of these candidates really change that all that much, unless we can consider the Maker's property, North Calais, by some stretch of the imagination.
North Maple Corner,
North,
maybe.
yeah, north. South North Calais.
It's not even as far as street.
Yeah. Does anybody else have strong feelings or advocacy?
I missed that one as
There's no
well.
feedback.
It's convenient out for both.
No, so I was gonna ask you what you all thought at the time, you clearly went,
I mean, very anecdotally,
yeah.
I selfishly want to be like sensitive to Toby already filling a lot of roles in the town, and knowing
Yeah.
how integral he was in the FEMA project, like keeping capacity for Toby in reserve. But I also want to acknowledge and be mindful that like this is a unique circumstance where we're now reconsidering other folks, and the optics of somebody being passed up twice could come back as, a detriment in the eyes of the voters, if somebody's trying to read into the minutes, which is also not fair. I mean, I think this is really unique. You have two people who are probably pretty well qualified and longtime community members, and that's a pretty significant qualifier for the position.
I would put a plug in for Toby.
I agree that they're both incredibly qualified and gone back and forth a lot. I share the concern a little bit about, we've sort of gone through a couple recently, and going into next spring, Toby's a known entity in terms of his knowledge of the process and his true understanding of how much work it is. And, Tim's comment early on about, in his letter, I think initially, or maybe his conversation with you, about I'll probably run, but I have to see how it goes. Gives me a little bit of pause.
Yeah.
Because I know next spring is a big time for the listers, and if we have a change right in March, that could really be detrimental to their work.
Well, maybe an appointment of Toby is also a commitment to the select board to, actively find other folks who can, assume some of the other responsibilities and start that legacy planning.
And also, I know Tim well, he's a fabulous person, he's very smart, he's very capable, and I think we should, if we go with Toby, we should encourage him to find another thing.
Right, yeah.
Valuable asset to the
Yeah.
town, to
Yeah.
pull into more committee, it's like, that we can't have both of them.
Right.
Like,
Well, I'm getting a sense that there's some consensus then leaning towards Toby. So with that, I will entertain a motion to appoint Toby to the 3-year term ending in 2026 position of lister. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much. Oh, Barbara.
So I have a question. Based on this conversation, whoever's going to call tomorrow to let the two gentlemen know, whoever's going to call Tim, perhaps we could go have in front of you, whoever's gonna make that call, if it's gonna be one of you, a list of all the current openings that we are currently recruiting for, and say, if you have any interest in any of these, we really have an open invitation for you to consider these. We'd love to have more involvement, more engagement in the town, but actually be ready to have that conversation with them. With a personal invitation to consider any of the current openings.
I will commit to making those phone calls. I've got the time tomorrow to
Okay.
make them.
How do you do it?
No, I can do it, for sure. I can call Toby and let him know, and then I'll plan on touching base with Tim.
Okay, so I will give the updated list to you by tomorrow morning.
That'd be awesome. Thank you,
Okay.
Barbara. And we're only 20 minutes over, but we were like 40 minutes behind, so I think that's technically kind of a win, right?
we'll go with that.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
That's it.
Well, you see to the end.
What'd you think of your first?
Were you inspired?
Oh, I said.